Chapter 1. London. The Leaky Cauldron. The bar owner saw the young man appearing at the door. His pupils could not help but shrink. At the same time, the whole bar also became quiet. The young man at the door seemed to be used to all this. Walked directly towards Tom. He has extremely black hair, three-dimensional facial features, handsome appearance, well-proportioned body shape, and is also very tall. But there is a fly in the ointment. He had two heavy dark circles under his eyes, which immediately made him look haggard. Come to the counter. Tom swallowed a mouthful of saliva and asked cautiously, Luo Lin, are you escaping from prison again? Others in the bar also turned their attention to the young man, waiting for his answer. Rolin Rasmus smiled when he heard this. How is that possible? They just coordinated with me a little bit. Old Tom felt very strange. They asked you to coordinate? What to coordinate with? They asked me to be a professor at Hogwarts, Luo Lin said calmly. Old Tom was confused. The reason why he reacted so strongly. It's because the person in front of him shouldn't be here at this time, but should be in Azkaban. Rolin Rasmus, a very well-known figure in the British wizarding community. He was an ordinary orphan in an orphanage. After graduating from public school, enter and work in an ordinary company. Such an ordinary person. But at the age of 20, his magic power exploded and he became a wizard. Logically speaking, this is somewhat strange. But one more wizard isn't a big deal. It's just that Rolin's wizard is slightly different from other wizards. He is a necromancer. How to say? The necromancer profession has not appeared for centuries. For the current magical world, necromancers are properly classified as dark wizards. After all, necromancers play with corpses, and in legends they carry many ominous qualities. Suddenly such a type of mage appeared. The entire magical world is confused. After Rolin Rasmus became a wizard, the Ministry of Magic contacted him immediately. After seeing Rolin use bones to summon a skeleton, they did not hesitate to throw Rolin into Azkaban. For those at the Ministry of Magic, this is undoubtedly desecrating the body. Moreover, Luo Lin's magic power is full of uncomfortable atmosphere. They feel that Lorraine Rasmus is undoubtedly the third Dark Lord. Thinking of Voldemort and Grindelwald, the Ministry of Magic already has PTSD, and they will not allow Rolin to grow into the third Dark Lord. After learning about Rowling's situation, the British magical community also agreed with the Ministry of Magic's handling of the matter. That's all. Lorraine Rasmus was imprisoned in Azkaban. However, it took less than 3 days. Luo Lin came out. It's not because the Ministry of Magic is out of kindness and ready to release him. Instead, he escaped from prison in a grand manner. Luo Lin walked out of Azkaban with a dozen of his skeletons. In the entire Azkaban, no one could stop him. After the jailbreak incident, the Ministry of Magic was unhappy. They mobilized all the Auror teams to capture Luo Lin. I thought Luo Lin would resist. As a result, Rowling followed them back to Azkaban. Found out after investigation. After Rolin came out of Azkaban, he just went to the Leaky Cauldron for a drink. Tom also met Rolin at that time, and the skeletons around him. Old Tom was terrified. I thought Rolin was going to do something to the Leaky Cauldron. It really turned out to be just drinking. He thought everything was over. The news came again a week later. Rolin escaped from prison again. This jailbreak is even more serious than the last time. He not only escaped from prison with his own skeleton, but also with the Dementors from Azkaban. This frightened the people at the Ministry of Magic. Senior officials from the Ministry of Magic quickly came over to communicate with Luo Lin. Finally, an agreement was reached. As long as Luo Lin is willing to return to Azkaban with the Dementors, they can give Luo Lin the best treatment. That time, Luo Lin also came to the Leaky Cauldron. Old Tom didn't see the Dementors, but the skeletons around Luo Lin changed again. This is the third time I have seen Luo Lin. Old Tom was surprised, felt normal, and a little confused. This time, I didn't see Luo Lin's skeleton. Where are the skeletons? And Rowling said that he became a professor at Hogwarts. Will Hogwarts still teach necromancy? Rowling did not explain to Old Tom that he became a professor at Hogwarts. In fact, he was also surprised when he heard the news. He, a necromancer who studied necromancy in Azkaban, was actually invited to Hogwarts. Later, people from the Ministry of Magic came to talk to him. Say Dumbledore has decided that you will go to Hogwarts to be the defense against the dark arts professor. Rowling wanted Dumbledore to hire someone else. He is really not humble. The key point is that he, a prisoner of Azkaban's necromancy who only knows necromancy, why did he go to Hogwarts to become a professor? But Dumbledore was very insistent and even came to see him and said that he had decided to let him be the professor of defense against the dark arts. No way. Luo Lin is still quite curious about Hogwarts. Since Dumbledore is so insistent, I am not afraid that he will mislead others, so just be a professor. The worst thing is to study on your own before going to teach students. Anyway, he has a system. That's right. Rolin has a system. Luo Lin Rasma, whose real name was Luo Lin, later traveled to this world somehow and became a very standard time traveler orphan. I thought this was just an ordinary world, but he didn't expect to become a wizard at the age of 20. He also awakened the supreme undead system and became a necromancer who accompanies death. Then he was discovered by the Ministry of Magic. Went to Azkaban for a while. It was a little uncomfortable at first. Went out for a walk twice. Later Azkaban was pretty good too, especially after the Ministry of Magic equipped him with air conditioning, a sofa, a luxurious bed, and all kinds of other things to enjoy. He was a little happy and reluctant to think about Shu. You can have a comfortable life without going to work. Almost anything he wants, the Ministry of Magic will try its best to satisfy him. This kind of life was simply what he could not have wished for in his previous life. The most important thing is, in Azkaban, his system can still be used to its full potential. Let his necromancer level increase rapidly. He is 21 years old this year. He has been in Azkaban for nearly a year. If Dumbledore hadn't asked him to come out, he figured he would stay in Azkaban forever. But staying indoors all the time is a bit uncomfortable. This time I happened to be working as a professor for a while, and I also met a few people I wanted to meet. After all, this year is 1991. Chapter 2. Luo Lin ordered a glass of ale, sat next to him, and drank. The bar gradually became lively again. Old Tom looked at Luo Lin, who looked calm. I thought, wait until tomorrow. The Daily Prophet probably has another report on Luo Lin. I just don't know whether the news about Rowling's escape from prison or the news about Rowling becoming a professor at Hogwarts is more shocking. Most likely it's the latter. After all, Luo Lin has escaped from prison twice, but this is his first time as a professor. To be honest, Old Tom has not recovered yet. You said Luo Lin is a necromancer. Prisoner of Azkaban. How did you become a professor? He was more worried. This year my granddaughter happens to be going to Hogwarts. Luo Lin want to be a professor. You won't lead your granddaughter into evil, right? But Luo Lin didn't seem to have done anything bad. At least he paid for it every time he came to drink. Old Tom thought for a moment. Luo Lin is not that scary. First, he has never killed anyone, and second, he has never committed a crime, except for escaping from prison. It's not good to be discriminated against just because of your profession. He has no ill feelings towards Luo Lin. However, the vast majority of wizards stayed away from Luo Lin, the necromancer. Old Tom didn't want to appear unsociable, so he naturally became a little alienated from Luo Lin. It's not just him. Many wizards have this idea. Looking at the handsome young man in the corner of the bar, he sipped his ale. Old Tom couldn't help but sympathize. An orphan, only 22 years old. In today's society, not only is he a child, he is definitely a young man. Society should be more tolerant of such young people. Certainly. It would be better if Luo Lin was not his granddaughter's professor. It was the words of my granddaughter, the professor. He could also get closer to Rolando. It's always good to have more acquaintances in school. Luo Lin, who was drinking, didn't know what Old Tom was thinking, but his keen perception allowed him to feel Old Tom's gaze. That look of pity made him feel uncomfortable. Luo Lin quickly drank the wine in the glass in a few sips. Stand up and leave. But he suddenly thought that he had other things to do when he came here tomorrow, so he could only stop, turn around, and come to Old Tom. When Old Tom saw him coming, his heart moved and he asked with a smile, Luo Lin, do you need anything? Looking at Old Tom's smile, Luo Lin felt a little panicked. But he really had something to ask Old Tom for help. Mr. Tom, I have to go to Diagon Alley for something, but I've never been in there before. Can you take me in there once? That's right. Although Rolin is already a wizard, he has never been to Diagon Alley. After all, the time he can move freely outside is very short each time, and no one wanted to take him into Diagon Alley. He did read the Harry Potter books. It's just that there is no specific entry method in the book. No way. He can only seek help from Old Tom, who doesn't seem to reject him so much. Hear his cry for help. Old Tom smiled even brighter. Of course, Luo Lin, come with me. He didn't expect that just after he decided to get closer to Luo Lin in the future, Luo Lin would ask him for help. And it's so easy to help. It's totally a piece of cake. Tom led Rolin across the bar. We arrived at a small patio surrounded by walls. It looks very shabby here. There was nothing but a trash can and some weeds. Luo Lin looked around for a moment, focused on the trash can. When he was reading novels in his previous life, There are always people who want to make a fuss about trash cans. It made him a little curious about the trash can and wanted to know if there was anything special about this trash can. However, after he looked carefully, I found this to be an ordinary trash can. There was no trace of magic on it. There is no special mechanism, just used to make a logo. However, as the iconic item entering Diagon Alley, the trash can still has certain special characteristics. It's just that this particularity is reflected in its reference value, not any other value. When Luo Lin looked around, Old Tom had already led him to the trash can. Watch carefully, Luo Lin. Count 3 blocks up from here, then count 2 blocks from here, and that's where it is. Old Tom pointed to a brick on the wall. Luo Lin carefully noted the location of the bricks. Although there is a high probability that I will go back to Azkaban to enjoy it after coming out of Hogwarts, but that doesn't mean he doesn't need to come to Diagon Alley. You can buy many things that wizards need in Diagon Alley. Luo Lin is a necromancer and a wizard. He definitely needs to come in and buy some stuff too. At least he was interested in the various delicacies in Diagon Alley. Remember? Asked Old Tom. Luo Lin nodded. You need to tap here 3 times next. According to what Old Tom said, Luo Lin stretched out his fingers and tapped lightly on the wall 3 times. The next moment, the brick he knocked on began to tremble. The walls began to move. A hole appeared in the middle. It was a small hole at first, and then it got bigger and bigger. Soon a wider archway was formed. Opposite the archway, it is a street paved with cobblestones with no end in sight. This is Diagon Alley. Luo Lin felt like he was checking in at an internet celebrity attraction. He also did not forget to thank Old Tom. Thank you, Mr. Tom. You're welcome, Luo Lin. You go in first. I have to go back and watch the bar. Old Tom waved his hand, turned around and left. After Old Tom leaves, Luo Lin walked forward along the archway. Wait until he steps onto the street. The archway behind him has also been restored to its original state. He couldn't figure out how the archway worked. Mainly, he is just a necromancer, not an all-powerful mage. Luo Lin is very proficient in the magic of the undead system, but other systems of magic. Not to say that I know nothing, I can only say that I understand all the 7 orifices and understand none. That's why he came to Diagon Alley. The purpose is to buy some textbooks here and systematically study the conventional magic in the magic world. Otherwise, he went to Hogwarts. You can't teach undead magic. Not everyone can learn necromancy. Luo Lin knows it very well. The rumors that necromancers are surrounded by bad luck are not false. It's just that he is special. You are immune to this misfortune. Others should just stick to the path of modern magic. There must be a reason why the Ministry of Magic does not allow necromancers to appear. Take to the streets of Diagon Alley. Luo Lin was not in a hurry to go to the bookstore. Instead, I walked around and admired the surrounding scenery. Various shops line the streets. The closest one to him is a crucible shop. It's called Partridge's Crucible Shop. There are various crucibles stacked outside the store. Luo Lin looked at these crucibles and considered whether to buy one. Chapter 3. As a necromancer, Luo Lin often needs crucibles to process materials and make potions. After all, those little cuties of his don't want nothing. The supply of magic power is part of it, but there are other things that can save Luo Lin's own magic power. Certainly, Luo Lin's magic power is abundant now. The main reason is that I don't have many cute little ones at my disposal, so I can't use the crucible for the time being. But if you don't use it now, it doesn't mean you won't use it in the future. Luo Lin actually had an idea deep down in his heart. One day he will become the ultimate necromancer. Then try Scourge of the Undead. It's just that the undead natural disasters of other necromancers are going to bring disaster. His undead natural disaster just wants to be pulled out to show off. Luo Lin has no intention of retaliating against society. After all, he was now a regular prisoner of Azkaban. The parent department is the Ministry of Magic. The Ministry of Magic assigned him a room, allocated various supplies to him, and paid him a monthly salary. That's right. The Ministry of Magic pays him a salary, and it's not low. Otherwise, where would he get the money to buy things in Diagon Alley? He also has a desire to shop. It's just that he is usually too lazy to go out, so he always asks others to do the shopping for him. The salary is high, the benefits are good, and you don't have to do much work. What a great superior department. Loyalty. Rowling is now very loyal to the Ministry of Magic. The premise is that the Ministry of Magic has maintained such good treatment. Otherwise, his loyalty will also decline. Looking at the crucible, Luo Lin thought about it carefully. Just forget it. There is no need to spend this wasted money. Wait until you go to Hogwarts. Become a professor. Dumbledore should be able to match it. It is more comfortable to use public goods, and the quality is guaranteed. As for why he, a defense against the dark arts teacher, needed a crucible, all I can say is this important? Shouldn't schools consider what teachers need and then give them something? Say it again. A wizard who was a professor at Hogwarts didn't even have a cauldron. Dumbledore can't live with it either. Anyway, Luo Lin felt that Dumbledore should give him a cauldron. At worst, he will issue the invoice then. Leave the crucible shop here. Rolin wandered around Diagon Alley. Saw countless shops here. Ela Owl Store, a pet store that sells owls and owl supplies. This Luo Lin doesn't need it. He has his own little cute owl. Florent Fusco ice cream shop. Luo Lin bought one. The ice cream tasted pretty good. Jumping and playing in the magic joke shop. The joke shop, Luo Lin has no interest. He's not someone who likes to show off and play pranks. Only people like the Weasley twins and Lee Jordan would be better suited here. Gringotts, the only known bank in the wizarding world, is where most people store their money and valuables. Luo Lin didn't need it. He had the space provided by the system, which was no smaller than Gringotts' vault. Luo Lin doesn't need junk shops or shops that sell secondhand goods. He has money and will buy new ones. Mrs. Malkin's robe store, a clothing store, was the store Luo Lin originally planned to enter. Later I thought about it. Hogwarts should have customized professor uniforms, so forget it. It's better to have S*X for free. As for other women's beauty shops, magical animal shops, Quidditch boutiques, stationery supply stores, magic supplies stores, and so on, Luo Lin didn't even look at it. There is basically nothing here that he needs. The only thing that made him stop for a moment was Ollivander's wand shop. London's only wand shop, a monopoly, where little wizards buy wands. But he had no need for a wand. His undead magic does not require a wand, or even reciting incantations or using hands. It can be said to be an innate talent, or it can be said to be an active skill with no operational threshold. This has to be said about Luo Lin's system. His system is called the Undead Supreme Mage system. The functions of the system are not complicated either. It is just a system main body, and then some modules are installed. The main body of the system can swallow a variety of items containing the aura of the undead, and then increase Luo Lin's level of necromancer. The additional modules include Soul Servant module, Storage Space module, Perception Enhancement module, and Scanning module. There should be some other modules, but Luo Lin hasn't found a way to install them yet. Among the 4 existing modules, the Storage Space module and Scanning module are built in. The remaining 2 are modules he acquired after mastering soul manipulation and enslaving Dementors. The function is exactly as it sounds. One is a module for controlling soul servants. The other can greatly enhance one's own perception and at the same time be immune to any negative mental effects. All of Rolin's necromancy magic is derived from his necromancer profession. The panel properties are as follows. Subject, Rolin Razma age, 22 main profession. Necromancer, LV 65 subprofession. Wizard, Harry Potter world, LV 2 main professional skills. Awakening the undead LV 10 max. Manipulating the soul LV 15 max. Terror LV 10 max. Group panic LV 12. Awakening advanced undead LV 18. Banshee's cry LV 11. Flesh refining LV 8. Reincarnated lich LV 2. 44 omitted individual. Subprofessional skills. None. It took a year. Luo Lin's main profession, necromancer, has reached level 65. He doesn't quite know what level 65 is. Anyway, being able to summon high-level necromancers can be regarded as a high-level necromancer. As for the subprofessional wizard, the reason why there are levels, it's entirely because of the level bonus brought by the magic power in the body. As for everything about wizards, Luo Lin really knew nothing about it. He has not systematically learned any wizard knowledge. After becoming a necromancer, he spent most of his time in Azkaban. Those who came into contact were either undead, Dementors, or those from the Ministry of Magic. Not to mention undead and Dementors, these two couldn't teach him anything. Those at the Ministry of Magic also gave him a wide berth. In addition, Luo Lin's main profession was upgraded very quickly, and the role of his subprofessions was not that great, so he was too lazy to learn it. Now about to enter Hogwarts as a professor. In order not to mislead others, Luo Lin planned to sharpen his gun before the battle and suddenly learn about the wizard knowledge of this world. At any rate, I have to raise my level to level 10 or above. Make yourself look less like an outsider. Certainly, Luo Lin didn't plan to learn them all. He doesn't have that much energy. The main thing is to learn the one I teach, Defense Against Dark Arts. Defense Against the Dark Arts teaches students how to resist the various types of dark magic, including dark magic creatures, various dark spells, and duels. This is a core Hogwarts course. It is still very important to the students of Hogwarts. Chapter 4. After shopping around elsewhere, Luo Lin ate something and then arrived at the destination of his trip, flourish and block books. As a teacher who teaches, Luo Lin must first ensure that he can understand the content in the textbook. Otherwise, even if you follow the script, you may make a joke. So the main purpose of his coming here is to buy the Defense Against the Dark Arts textbook. I also bought some other books related to defense against the dark arts. Luo Lin does not expect to become a defense against the dark arts expert in a short time. He just hoped that he would not show shyness in front of the students when he read the textbook. He was also able to answer the students' questions. This has already met his basic requirements. For that matter, Luo Lin is still very confident. After all, he has a system. In the Perception Enhancement module, there is an accompanying small function. Enhance his memory and understanding abilities in all aspects. With such a small function, Luo Lin feels that his learning speed should be okay. Just like he was reading those idle books in Azkaban. Generally speaking, he can memorize most of the books after reading them twice. If you remember carefully, a book of about 100 pages can definitely be finished in a day or two, not to mention the ability to understand. In Luo Lin's mind, understanding is equated with comprehension. There is no doubt that the strengthening of memory and understanding abilities is equivalent to the strengthening of learning ability. Luo Lin has no difficulty choosing when it comes to shopping. He quickly selected the book he wanted in the bookstore, paid the money, and left. A thought came to my mind. After putting the book into the space, he didn't stop at Diagon Alley either. Back to the leaky cauldron again. This time it didn't cause much of a stir. The leaky cauldron was quiet for just a moment, then resumed. Old Tom noticed him coming out and greeted him with a smile. Luo Lin, have you bought what you want? As he spoke, he looked at Luo Lin doubtfully. Why are you empty-handed and didn't buy anything? Then he seemed to think of something and suddenly realized, oh, you have no money, right? How could I forget this? You have been in Azkaban. How can you have money? Just wait, I'll get you some galleons. Old Tom turned to leave. Luo Lin quickly stopped him. No need, I've already bought what I want. He turned his hand over, and a stack of books appeared in his hand. Old Tom stared at this scene dumbfounded. What kind of magic is this? Is it the traceless stretching spell? But the traceless stretching spell didn't come out of nowhere, right? This is a little magic that's just for me. Luo Lin turned his hand again, and the book in his hand disappeared. Old Tom can guarantee that. This time he didn't blink at all. Those books really disappeared suddenly, as if they had entered another space. But since Luo Lin didn't explain much, Old Tom didn't ask any more questions. It would be rude to ask such a question involving personal privacy. But where did you get the galleons? He asked a relatively normal question. Luo Lin looked innocent. Of course the Ministry of Magic paid me a salary. I was a prisoner in Azkaban. Didn't they even pay me a salary? Old Tom's closed mouth opened again. What the hell? When did the Ministry of Magic become so kind and pay wages to prisoners? Are you kidding me? Old Tom asked cautiously. Of course not. This is an agreement between me and the Ministry of Magic. I help them guard Azkaban, and they pay me a salary. This is very reasonable indeed. Rowling is controlling the soul-shooting monsters from leaving Azkaban. Shouldn't the Ministry of Magic pay him? Old Tom didn't know the details. But when he heard that Luo Lin was going to guard Azkaban, he nodded. For such a dangerous job as guarding Azkaban, you do need to be paid. So now that you have become a professor at Hogwarts, don't you get 2 salaries? After all, you should be considered an employee of the Ministry of Magic, right? Old Tom suddenly asked. Luo Lin was immediately stopped by the question and scratched his head. I haven't really thought about this, but it should be 2 salaries. I will find time to ask the leaders of the Ministry of Magic in the future. Logically speaking, even if he is not in Azkaban, he still controls the Dementors in Azkaban. This salary obviously belongs to him. Luo Lin thinks Old Tom is really a good man. If it weren't for Old Tom's reminder, he must have forgotten about it. How can it be done with 1 less salary? Today's society, 1 salary is not enough to support a family. Another salary is needed to resist risks. Luo Lin decided to write a letter to Fudge as soon as he settled in Hogwarts, asking him not to forget the salary he deserved. After chatting casually with Old Tom for a few words, Luo Lin ordered another glass of fruit wine. He always drank fruit wine when he came here before. The glass of ale I ordered today didn't quite suit my taste, so I changed it back to fruit wine. He is someone who likes to stay in his comfort zone. Once you encounter difficulties outside your comfort zone, they will immediately shrink back into their comfort zone. Finish the drink. Rolin walked out of the leaky cauldron, came to a hotel in a nearby street. This is his temporary residence. He wouldn't go to Hogwarts for 2 days. He will stay in a hotel for the next 2 days. Fortunately, Luo Lin still has a lot of pounds in his hands. The hotel we stayed in was quite good, a 4-star hotel. Although it wasn't as good as his residence in Azkaban, he could still sleep well. These pounds were earned by him working as an ordinary person before becoming a necromancer. I never had the chance to spend it later. I'm afraid it will be difficult to spend it in the future. Luo Lin didn't save anything. If not the best hotel in the neighborhood is a 4-star hotel, he would definitely try to go straight to a 5-star hotel. And the reason why I want to live near here, it's because he still has somewhere to go. In fact, this place was the place where he spent the longest time besides Azkaban after becoming a necromancer. That's Nocturne Alley. Nocturne Alley is another magical business district besides Diagon Alley, but it's a completely different situation than Diagon Alley. Most of the shops here are those related to black magic. The customers and bosses inside are also some strange people. Anyway, Nocturne Alley is a relatively dangerous place, kind of like the black market in the wizarding world. There are no rules that must be followed here. It can be said that there are almost no taboos. Almost everything you can't see in the wizarding world can be found in Nocturne Alley. And Luo Lin is a necromancer. As everyone knows, the necromancer requires less mainstream materials. Nocturne Alley happens to sell materials that are not mainstream. Chapter 5. Stay in the hotel. Luo Lin looked through the defense against the dark arts book he bought. One afternoon, Luo Lin's subprofessional level was raised to LV3. This was of no use to Rolin, so much so that he just glanced at it when the system prompted it and never paid attention to it again. The next day, Luo Lin followed the original plan. Head to Nocturne Alley. Same as Diagon Alley. Nocturne Alley is not directly accessible from the world of Muggle life. This can be reached using apparition or flue powder. Nocturne Alley can also be accessed through the leaky cauldron. Rolin naturally chose to go through the leaky cauldron, where he had no choice. Firstly, he couldn't use the flue network. He didn't have flue powder, and secondly, he couldn't apparate. As a necromancer, he has no means of spatial movement. I had no choice but to walk over honestly. In the leaky cauldron, he received the care of old Tom again. Luo Lin had no intention of drinking this time and went directly into Nocturne Alley. This is a dark, narrow alley. There are all kinds of weird people. Rolin came twice. Already visited here. There was nothing to see, so he chose to go directly to his destination. Bogenbach store? The Bogenbach store is located at 13B Nocturne Lane. It's an antique store run by Mr. Borkin and Mr. Burke. The two bosses often deal with unusual ancient wizarding artifacts. Because of the greed of the two men and the cunning and sinister nature of their customers, this store has handled a large amount of gray business. Luo Lin naturally bought some gadgets here. Come outside the store. Could see the shop windows were covered in dust and looked terrible. Luo Lin didn't care and walked directly into the store. The store is stocked with a wide variety of merchandise. Withered human hands, blood-stained playing cards, glass eyeballs, hideous masks. There are various human bones on the counter, as well as many strange instruments. When Luo Lin came here for the first time, he felt a little depressed. At that time, he was just a level 10 necromancer. Now he is over 60. Standing here feels like going home. 2 words. Kind. Mr. Rowling, it's a pleasure to see you again. Not long after he entered the door, a smooth voice came over. Nice to see you again, Mr. Borgin. Luo Lin nodded towards the greasy-headed Mr. Borgin. It's an honor to serve you. What can I do for you? Is it still the same? I have a new batch of goods here. They just arrived today. The price is very reasonable, Mr. Borkin said in a flattering manner. As the saying goes, the customer is God. Luo Lin bought a lot of things from him the last 2 times, so his attitude was naturally very good. Luo Lin nodded. Yes, Mr. Borgin, the same old rules apply. It's time for my little cuties to change bodies again. Mr. Borgin is already used to it. Your servants are so lucky to have a master like you. Luo Lin was not sure whether Mr. Borgin was really complimenting him or just being arrogant. After all, the reason why his servant needed to change bodies, it was because of cooperating with his experiment that my body was damaged. Luo Lin has a strong desire to explore. Always experiment when you encounter something you don't understand. His little cuties were the thing he couldn't understand the most. The results are clear. He still didn't understand, and his servant lost his body. After Mr. Bourgin praised Luo Lin, He took out 3 complete sets of human bones from the counter with ease. Everything from skulls to leg bones. In this regard, Mr. Bourgeon is very professional. Of course, there is no Rolin major. Luo Lin only needed to glance at it to know whether the 3 human bones in front of him were missing any bones. It turns out, Mr. Bourgeon is not that greedy yet. All 3 are complete. Luo Lin skillfully took out the money from the space and paid it to Mr. Bourgeon. Mr. Bourgeon took the galleons and said with some embarrassment, "Sorry, Mr. Luo Lin, the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic have been following too closely recently, and there are very few new goods arriving, so in terms of price." He didn't say the rest of the words, but he understood everything. Luo Lin was wealthy and asked, "Then how much more do I need to add?" 50 gold galleons. Mr. Bourgeon held out 5 fingers. Luo Lin was really surprised now. It's actually increased so much. 50 gold galleons, that's 1/6 of the salary of a ministerial official at the Ministry of Magic. He was working hard in Azkaban, and his monthly salary was only 150 galleons. 1/3 of the sales were wiped out with one price increase. Even if Luo Lin doesn't lack this little money, I also felt some physical pain. He did not bargain with Mr. Bourgeon, but paid the money readily. But I asked Bourgeon for a head start. "Can Hands of Glory give me one?" Luo Lin's request was not excessive. The Hand of Glory, the best friend of the thief and robber, puts a candle on it, and only the person holding it can see the light. It is not complicated to make and not expensive. It's a good choice as an add-on. Luo Lin doesn't actually need it, but he can still study it when he is bored. Mr. Bourgeon had no doubts. "Of course, Mr. Luo Lin, the customer is God. I will meet your requirements." He agreed too quickly. Luo Lin instantly realized that he had been taken advantage of again. Why say again? The last time he was here, I also bought a few skeletons. Mr. Bourgeon didn't increase the price that time, but just said that it was a big promotion week at Bogenbach store. If you want to buy a skeleton, you have to buy some matching items. For example, human nails, human hair, etc. Luo Lin didn't quite understand what this kind of behavior was called. Later, I asked a lady for advice, and she told Luo Lin that this was called distribution. It can also be said to be a bundled sale. In fact, Luo Lin has no need for nails or hair. Until now, those bundled items are still stored in his space, with no chance to use them. This was Luo Lin's first experience of being taken advantage of here. Now for the second time. Rolin is almost certain. There was no such thing as Aurors chasing after her. It was just Mr. Bourgeon who made up a story to force the price to increase. Luo Lin was equivalent to buying the Hand of Glory with 50 gold galleons. Big loss. Being taken advantage of. Luo Lin remained calm. It's not that he isn't angry, but as a necromancer, he no longer exhibits any emotional behavior. This is determined by the characteristics of the necromancer. At least this is what a necromancer like him has. Luo Lin was obviously unhappy with Mr. Bourgeon, but he still smiled and thanked him. Just when leaving the Bogenbach store, he accidentally used a group to summon the undead, and it just so happened. This summoning of the undead happens to be used in the Bogenbach store. So the bones, skeletons, flesh, and other undead materials in Mr. Bourgeon's shop were lucky enough to escape. Chapter 6. Mr. Bourgeon's wails were heard. Rolin expressed sympathy for him. He didn't expect this to happen. He was so careless. To help Mr. Bourgeon, Rolin used another summon the undead before leaving Nocturne Alley. Help Mr. Bourgeon solve the problem of undead rebellion once and for all. As for Mr. Bourgeon chasing him out and scolding him, Luo Lin said he would not pursue the case. After all, he is a very generous man. He also thoughtfully called Mr. Bourgeon to the Auror Command of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Wanting to help Mr. Bourgeon asked the Aurors for help. However, Mr. Bourgeon refused his help, which made him regretful. Why is it so difficult to be a good person? Luo Lin fell into thought. After finishing dinner, he figured it out. It must be that he didn't do his good deeds thoroughly enough. Wait until next time I see Mr. Bourgeon. If Mr. Bourgeon is still as enthusiastic as before, he will definitely continue to do good things. Another day off. After reading the book, Luo Lin felt a little bored. So I groped around in the space and found some broken bones that didn't fit together. Take these broken bones that don't come in complete sets. He managed to form a bird shape. Open the Soul Servant module, Luo Lin thought, and a screen of light appeared in front of his eyes. Soul Servant module list of Soul Servants. Ibwa, Avery, Black. Soul Servant operation level. First level LV10 max. Maximum number of manipulated souls to obey. 32. Looking at the long list of soul servants, Luo Lin was a little confused. Who can he ask to come out and talk to him for a while? Think about it. He decided to call out the one who spoke the least. Although he wanted someone to talk to him, he didn't want to be a chatterbox. Infused with Blake's soul, Luo Lin chose Blake and injected his soul into the bone bird that was barely put together in front of him. A dark light flashed. The bones on the table seemed to be alive, standing upright on the table. This is a weird-looking bone bird. The nose is not a nose, and the eyes are not eyes. The two wings are not the same size. There is also a tailbone, but it appears to be very flexible. After the soul was injected, the first thing the bone bird did was to turn its skull 3 times. Whole bone bird. This is the only skull that belongs to a real bird. Other parts are various bones. Blake, are you awake? Seeing the movement of bone bird, Luo Lin asked in a low voice. Yes, my lord. A clear and moving female voice came from the bone bird. That's right. Bones can talk. And this soul servant named Black is a woman. Why can bones talk? Luo Lin himself didn't know. It's like he has no idea how bones make sounds. That's why he dismantled so many bones, just to study the sound-producing parts of the bones. It turns out, it is fruitless to explore such questions in a world of extraordinary power. But Luo Lin is a persistent person. He has not given up exploring this issue until now. Under the protest of his little cuties, Luo Lin said that he would definitely seek their opinions in the future. Only with their consent will Luo Lin start research. Judging from this matter, Luo Lin is still very particular about human rights. Oh no, the rights of the undead. Hear Blake's answer. Luo Lin nodded. So Black, can you fly now? Blake moved his stiff bones, tried for a while, and then shook his skull. It's not possible yet. The wings bones are too rudimentary to fly. We need more bone pieces. Blake's voice was cold and without any nonsense. Luo Lin casually took out a pile of broken bones from the space. Then take it and install it yourself. Let me know when you can fly. If you can't fly before I go to Hogwarts, then you'll have to fall asleep again. There is no doubt that Hogwarts does not allow undead to be brought in. But Rolin also has his own valid reasons. What he wants to bring is his own owl. It makes perfect sense that every wizard should have his own owl. As a necromancer, his owl is naturally undead, which is normal. But if Blake can't become a flying owl, he just had to give up the idea. Black would most likely have to wait until the next time he left Hogwarts to wake up. Blake replied calmly, As you command, my master. Luo Lin frowned. He realized he had made a mistake. It's not good to wake up the chatterbox, but it seems boring to wake up a soul servant who barely takes the initiative to speak. Blake, can't you take the initiative to find something to talk to me about? Luo Lin couldn't help but said. Blake installed a piece of bone on his wings and said calmly, Of course, my master. What aspect of the chat do you want to hear? Her answer almost made Luo Lin think he was using a voice assistant. He clearly remembered that although Blake used to be reticent in the past, it shouldn't be to this extent, right? I want to know why you talk so little now. Luo Lin asked directly. Blake's tone finally fluctuated. Master, if you are a female and have a name like Black, you won't be too happy. And if you suddenly woke up from a dark place and found yourself living in a 1-square-meter residence, you would be speechless. Luo Lin understood. Blake is dissatisfied with his name and the body he now inhabits. But Black, I have no new names to give you. The 28 pureblood families already have their own surnames. If you are assigned the name Black, you should accept it. When he named his soul servant, he chose it directly from the surnames of the 28 families. By the time he had 28 servants, names were no longer enough. That's why I thought of a new name source. Luo Lin chose to maintain the soul replenishment at 28 instead of the full 32. The distribution of these 28 names is very fair and just. Luo Lin made a lottery box and asked the 28 soul servants who had bodies to draw lots and choose their names. In fact, I have accepted it, but my master, I don't like it that much. Blake returned to a calm tone. Luo Lin understood. Accepting it, but saying you don't like it is arrogant. I'm sorry, but this is an arrangement of fate. As for your current living situation, I am also sorry, but based on the actual situation, you can only live here. Rolin said the right bullshit. Blake was still so calm. As you wish, my master. Chapter 7. After Blake was summoned, Luo Lin finally had one more person to talk to, so he was still in a good mood. At least Blake answered his questions. Normally, I wouldn't bother him actively. A good mood is important. Luo Lin felt that he learned defense against the dark arts much faster today. But he went to bed early today, because tomorrow, it's time to head to Hogwarts. Before going to bed, Rolin told Black, It's still the same old rule. While I'm sleeping, you watch the door for me. Blake flapped his wings without any fluctuation in his tone. No problem, my master. Looking at Blake, who still couldn't fly, Luo Lin suddenly felt worried. If Black can't fly until she enters Hogwarts, can she still be considered an owl? The most basic requirement for an owl should be that it can fly, right? Never mind. It's useless to think too much. Look at Blake's own creation. She had one night to assemble her body. The undead don't have to sleep anyway. Good night then, Blake. Good night, master, that's all. In a dark hotel, a bone bird is looking for suitable bones to fill its wings and body among a large pile of bone fragments on the table. On the bed next to him was a man sleeping soundly. If the hotel staff came in and saw this scene, I don't know how scared I will be. After all, the scene in front of me is really weird. Luo Lin slept soundly. Wake up, feeling comfortable all over. After going to the bathroom to wash up, I took a look at myself in the mirror. Handsome and elegant. What a succubus. The only drawback is that the two big dark circles under the eyes ruin the overall beauty. For these two dark circles, there was nothing Luo Lin could do. He is a necromancer. Necromancers are powerful in every way. But at what cost? Luo Lin didn't know the price for others. The price he paid was 2 black eyes. This is already the lowest price the system can help him choose. What can he do? I can only tolerate a little imperfection in my perfect self. There are always people who think that the dark circles under his eyes are a sign of excessive indulgence, and Luo Lin often loses control because of this. But if you can't hold it tight, you have to hold it tight. He doesn't have the ability to get rid of his 2 dark circles now, based on the necromancer knowledge he gained from the system. To be completely exempt from the cost of contacting the aura of the undead and learning undead magic, one needs to be at least level 100. He is only level 65 now. It's still a little bit worse. According to the current upgrade speed, it will take at least another year. Finished washing. Only then did Luo Lin start to pay attention to Blake by the windowsill. Blake's bones were now white. The bones Luo Lin just bought were white and slightly yellow, but now they have turned into pure white. He knew this was Black's own ability. Soul servants have their own soul power. After the soul is injected into the corresponding body, it will subtly change the body and make it improve in the direction it wants. Blake's soul power is pretty good among his 28 soul servants, so it only took one night. It had already changed the bones into her favorite pure white color. Good morning, Blake. You look so beautiful today. Luo Lin praised him sincerely. It is different from the crooked shape when it was first created yesterday. At this time, Blake's bone shape could be clearly seen as that of an owl. Even the bones on the wings are extremely perfect, and because the bones are white and smooth, they look strangely beautiful. Blake nodded his skull. Good morning, master. Thank you for your compliment. Luo Lin walked to the bed, took off his pajamas, put on the suit he just bought on the way back yesterday, and asked casually, Blake, how do you feel about this body now? After seeing Blake's body, he no longer worried about whether Blake could fly. Blake tilted his head, thought for a while and said, the quality of the bones is a bit poor. Some of the bones are defective and have been eaten by insects. However, I have not found a suitable replacement. Luo Lin was slightly embarrassed. After all, he was the one who assembled Blake's bones. After changing his clothes, he came to Blake. I'll find any missing bones for you. I need 2 half-inch cylindrical bones, a 1-inch long bone fragment, and preferably a bird leg bone. My leg is a little weak. Blake calmly stated his needs. Luo Lin quickly searched in his own space. Fortunately, he had collected a lot of bones of all kinds over the past year. It didn't take long to find what Blake had asked for. Blake also moved quickly. 3 strokes, 5 divisions, and 2 are enough to replace the bones. After a little adaptation, he was already flying around the room. After walking around the room 3 times, Blake stopped on Rolin's shoulder. Master, can you release a purifying soul for me? There are too many types of these bones. Some of them were contaminated when my soul penetrated yesterday. Of course, no problem. Rolin placed his hand on Blake's skull and skillfully released the purifying soul. Purify the soul is a necromancy magic that maintains the purity of the soul. Generally speaking, it cannot be used on humans and can only be used on undead creatures. Luo Lin has used it many times before. This brought his purified soul to nearly full level. However, this kind of undead magic is relatively useless, because for a soul servant like Blake, their souls all have a self-purifying effect. Even if Luo Lin does not use Purify the Soul, Blake will adapt to his body in a few days, and the soul will slowly become pure. Purify the soul after use. Blake let out a pleasant hum. Then he rubbed his skull against Luo Lin's hand, just like a domestic bird. Okay, it's almost 10 o'clock. Let's go have breakfast and then prepare to leave for Hogwarts. Luo Lin put all his things into the space and walked out of the hotel empty-handed. Having space is so convenient. No need to carry a suitcase when going out for fun. He finished his breakfast nearby. Blake was injected with some undead aura. For the undead, absorbing the breath of the undead is equivalent to eating. In fact, they don't need to eat, as long as the necromancer replenishes their magic power regularly. A more bizarre soul servant like Black is even more convenient. Luo Lin didn't even need to replenish his magic power. Their soul power will replenish the magic on its own. Therefore, Rolin injecting the undead aura into Blake was just equivalent to giving her snacks. If Luo Lin is a black-hearted master, a soul servant like Blake can be said to be a 24-hour robot. Or bring your own dry food. Chapter 8. Soon, Rolin took Blake to a taxi and arrived at King's Cross Station. Certainly, an undead like Black cannot be displayed directly in front of Muggles. This is also the agreement between Rowling and the Ministry of Magic. So since Blake left the hotel, most of the time, Luo Lin kept it in his suit pocket. As for how to put an owl-shaped skeleton in a suit pocket, just take it apart and put it in. Blake's soul has been injected into these bones and formed a complete body. For the undead, it's nothing if the bones are broken apart. As long as Blake wanted to, she can reorganize her body at any time. Enter King's Cross Station. Luo Lin found that there were not many suspected wizards around. Think about it too. It's not July yet. No notices from Hogwarts have been sent out. Surely no little wizard will come here. Only wizards who regularly travel between Hogwarts and London may appear. Wandered around the station for a while. Luo Lin quickly found Platform 9. There is a large plastic sign hanging on the platform with the number 9 written on it. Next to it is naturally platform number 10 with the number 10 hanging on it. Platform 9 and 3/4 is right between the two. Dumbledore had told him the entrance to the platform. It is located between the ticket gates between platforms 9 and 10. Walk directly through the railing and enter platform 9 and 3/4. It was almost 11 o'clock. Rolin didn't delay. Walked towards the ticket gate and then directly towards the railing. Then his eyes lit up. A dark red steam locomotive appeared in front of him. Behind him, where the ticket gate should have been, has turned into a wrought iron archway. It says platform 9 and 3/4. Luo Lin nodded secretly. Harry Potter's wizarding system still has merit. At least with his current level of undead magic, he still can't make this thing. Turning to look at the red steam car. There is a sign hanging on the car. Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. Thick smoke lingered over the steam locomotive. High emotional intelligence. There is an industrial-style aesthetic. Low EQ. What is serious pollution? Rolin paid no more attention to steam locomotives. What does air pollution in the UK have to do with him? He paid more attention to the wizards on the platform. There were not as many wizards on the platform as Luo Lin had imagined, but not too few. They occasionally shuttle on the platform, and sometimes they meet their acquaintances and say hello. The wizarding community in Britain is obviously not very large, especially since the circle of wizards going to Hogwarts is not that big. Many people walked in groups, talking and laughing, and on the road. There are also cats belonging to wizards walking around. Almost every wizard has an owl. These owls are not quiet. They are always chirping, making the already noisy platform even noisier. Luo Lin was slightly irritable. As a homebody, he was rarely in such an environment. It was too noisy, so he used magic to seal his ears. Just get ready to get in the car. But after seeing the owls around, Rolin also realized that Blake could be released. He grabbed a large pile of bones from his pocket. These bones are sucked together by the power of Blake's soul. Luo Lin just took out the bones. Blake couldn't wait to return to his original state. A bony owl with a slightly larger skull appeared. Luo Lin casually put her on his shoulders and then walked towards the train. In fact, some people have noticed Luo Lin. Luo Lin is a completely unfamiliar face, and he's very handsome. There will always be people who can't help but take a second look. Then they saw Luo Lin take out a pile of bones and transform into a bone owl. In addition to being horrified, they soon thought of Luo Lin's identity. It was the necromancer who made the headlines of the Daily Prophet twice. Rolin Razma? Wrong. It's been 3 times now. Just yesterday. The Daily Prophet's headline is also about Lorraine Razma, but this time it's no longer Rolin's jailbreak. Instead, Rowling became a professor at Hogwarts. The above describes in detail the whole process of Dumbledore personally going to the Ministry of Magic to invite the prisoner of Azkaban, Lorraine Razma, to serve as the defense against the dark arts professor at Hogwarts. There are all kinds of details, including Dumbledore's meeting with Rowling in person and their conversation for a long time are also recorded. There was just no content in the conversation between the two. But it can also be seen that the person who wrote this article must be an insider of the Ministry of Magic and was even present at the time. Regarding Luo Lin, the necromancer, becoming a professor at Hogwarts, wizards all over Britain were shocked. Not even just wizards. The inhuman creatures were also shocked. A necromancer, a prisoner destined to stay in Azkaban for the rest of his life. He unexpectedly transformed into a professor at Hogwarts. As the #1 wizard school in the wizarding world, Hogwarts has a high status in the hearts of wizards all over the world. The professors there are naturally very respected. Rolin became a professor. It means that he suddenly has a high social status from the lowest level of society. Ordinary wizards have no idea how Rowling gets along with the Ministry of Magic. Face this situation. Many wizards were dissatisfied. In their impression, necromancers are extremely terrifying. They desecrate corpses and manipulate souls. They are very evil existences. How could they rest assured that such a being wanted to be a professor? Especially the parents of little wizards who are going to Hogwarts this year. They had to think carefully. Should I send my child to Hogwarts? What if a child is led astray by a necromancer? But Rowling was personally invited by Dumbledore. As the greatest wizard in the wizarding world today, he is also a legend in the wizarding world. Wizards still trust Dumbledore, since Dumbledore personally invited Rowling. Does this mean that Luo Lin is not as scary as the legend says? Many wizards have this tangled mentality. There are some such wizards on Platform 9 3/4 today. They recognized Rolin. For a while, I didn't know how to deal with the relationship with Luo Lin. At the same time, other wizards recognized Luo Lin through the wizards around them and also knew Luo Lin's identity. The platform quickly became quiet. Almost everyone looked at Luo Lin intentionally or unintentionally. Want to see what kind of person this prisoner-turned-professor is? Luo Lin is used to people's attention. He knew that he was a famous figure in the British wizarding world. To the eyes of these people, he simply chose to ignore it, until he stepped onto the steam train. It took a while for the platform to become lively again. Chapter 9. After getting in the car, Luo Lin randomly found an empty cubicle and sat down. I didn't find the one with people, because he knows it very well. Those people may not be so willing to sit with him. Of course, some people may be curious about him. But Luo Lin doesn't have that much free time to deal well with these people. Have this time. He would rather talk to Blake about what it was like to be locked up in a dark room. Blake has always been resentful about being locked up in a small dark room. Not only her, but also Amber, Longbottom, Flint, and Malfoy all disliked her. The so-called dark room, that is Luo Lin's soul servant module. When his soul servant lost his body, it will be forced into a place by the soul servant module. Black and his friends called it the dark room. According to Blake, after being locked up in a small dark room, they can't feel the passage of time, but when they wake up, they will feel like they are in another world. Rolin has not experienced it and cannot resonate with Blake and others. I can only express my grievance to them, but in this situation, he really can't release everyone. Or wait for a special opportunity. Or wait until you leave Hogwarts and return to Azkaban. At that time, Blake and others can all come out. Luo Lin is preparing for both. The 3 bones I bought at the Bogenbach store are the complete bones in the supplementary space. Complete bones like this. After the soul servant is injected, you can immediately gain the ability to move. It was much easier than Blake's own hard work of building the skeleton. This is also a point of complaint from Blake. Luo Lin could obviously find him a bird skeleton, or even an owl skeleton, but he had to use broken bones to build a body for her. Regarding this point, Luo Lin was slightly unreasonable. The main fault is that he really didn't consider this issue. He suddenly thought of it when he was bored. In fact, in his original plan, there was no place for Blake and others. Blake and the others should have stayed in the dark room. But Rolin happened to be thinking of owls at that moment. That's why Black was able to come out of the dark room. After a while, a siren sounded outside. Hogwarts is about to depart. Luo Lin discovered something. Since he entered this compartment, no one has passed this compartment again. Logically speaking, someone will always borrow from here. He vaguely thought of the reason. I'm afraid word has spread on the platform and on the train that he is in this compartment. Otherwise, there would be no way there would be no one. For this situation, Luo Lin felt relaxed. It's a good thing for him that he doesn't have to endure other people's surprised or horrified looks. Soon the train started moving. The scenery outside the window keeps changing. Luo Lin also canceled the magic power on his ears. Start listening to the whirring sound of the steam locomotive moving. At the same time, calmly enjoy the scenery outside. The time came to about 12:30. There was a clicking sound in the aisle. At the same time, a slightly nervous voice came from outside the cubicle. "Sir, would you like to buy some food from the car?" Luo Lin reacted. It's the salesperson in the car. Logically speaking, a salesperson would push a cart into the booth and make sales. That way the probability of success will be much higher. But who told Luo Lin to sit in this compartment? The salesperson must also know who is inside. But out of duty, she had to come over and ask. Having the courage to say something like this is already quite good for a young salesperson. Luo Lin actually wanted to eat something. I especially want to try the strange flavored beans. But when he heard the nervous voice of the salesperson, he suddenly lost his appetite. "No, thank you." After his voice came out, the salesperson's relieved voice could be clearly heard outside. "Okay. Excuse me, sir." Then came the sound of hurried footsteps and the sound of a cart moving outside. Luo Lin felt a little bored. I have been in Azkaban before. The people around him are also weird. He doesn't feel much. In addition, he is a relatively homely person, so he is very comfortable living alone. I thought that I didn't have much need for social interaction and various group emotions, but judging from the current situation, he is still unshakable. Luo Lin took a long breath, shook his head, and shook the thoughts out of his head. I no longer think about the trembling voice of the salesperson just now. Instead, he closed his eyes and planned to take a nap. Sleeping is Luo Lin's best way to relieve his worries. It can also make time pass quickly. When Luo Lin was sleeping, Blake had been standing at the train window, looking at Luo Lin quietly. For undead servants, all kinds of emotions are actually relatively weak, but she could still feel Luo Lin's discomfort just now. Blake wanted to do something, but I don't know what to do. She could only stand on the windowsill and quietly watch Luo Lin sleep. The fields passing by outside the car window are even more desolate. The farmland is gone. Instead, there are forests, rivers, and hills. At first glance, it seems that we have arrived in a remote area. Luo Lin has been sleeping in this area. When he wakes up from his deep sleep, the sky outside is almost dark. Blake was still standing motionless on the windowsill. Seeing Luo Lin wake up, his tone showed no fluctuation. "Master, according to my observation, we are almost there." Luo Lin yawned and stretched by the way. "Is it almost there? That's good, I can't wait." He turned to look out the window, and there was a dark purple sky outside. There are also a lot of forests and mountains. The speed of the train has also slowed down a bit compared to before. Luo Lin put on the suit he took off while sleeping, got up and moved his body. His only dissatisfaction with the profession of necromancer is this body. For the necromancer, the body is not that important. They can even abandon their bodies in the later stages and transform into various strange creatures such as liches, thereby becoming immortal species. Therefore, the bodies of necromancers are often very weak, and it is normal for them to occasionally lack some parts. But Luo Lin's situation was different from theirs. The effects that ordinary necromancers need to suffer have been transferred by the system. He still hopes that his body can be stronger. It's just that the breath of the undead will gradually erode the body. It is true that he does not have to bear the side effects of the undead breath, but it is almost impossible to become stronger through exercise. Luo Lin's current physical condition has remained the same as when he was working as a part-time worker. At that time, his body was definitely not strong, and was in a sub-healthy state that was normal for this era, much worse than those strong muggles. Chapter 10. Halfway through physical activity. A voice echoed on the train. "The train will arrive at Hogwarts in 5 minutes. Please take your luggage with you, or stay in the car and let us take you to school." Luo Lin rubbed his neck. "Get up and go to the compartment door." Think about it. He didn't go out right away. After all, if he goes out, it will definitely be very eye-catching. At that time, everyone in the car might be waiting for him to get out first, which would be very embarrassing. The train is getting slower and slower. Finally stopped. Passengers on the bus were pushing and shoving and rushing toward the door. But there were not many people on this train. After a while, almost everyone got off the bus. Luo Lin estimated that the time was about the same. He also took Blake off the train. Standing on the dark and small platform, Luo Lin felt a bit of the cold wind at night. But it was summer at this time. The cold wind blows like a gentle breeze on my face, which is quite comfortable. Everyone in the car has already moved forward. Luo Lin did not delay. Along the narrow path, Luo Lin arrived quickly, and he soon came to the lake. A towering castle stands on a high hillside on the other side of the lake. There are many spears on the castle. Windows flashed under the stars. At this time, there was a group of small boats moored on the shore. The others walked towards the boat very skillfully. Luo Lin was not in a hurry. Instead, he turned his head and looked to the other side. The other side was also a place that interested him. Hogsmeade. Hogsmeade is the only village in Britain that is full of wizards and no muggles. There are also various facilities inside. Hogwarts students and teachers love going to Hogsmeade. Dumbledore and Hagrid would often go there too. However, the school stipulates where only students in 3rd grade and above can go on certain Saturdays. It must have the signature of the guardian. Luo Lin is a professor. Of course, there is no need for a specific time and the signature of the guardian. And even if he wanted it, he couldn't get it out. Because he is an orphan and has no guardian at all. Just thought of Hagrid. A loud voice came from a small boat on the lake. Is Professor Razma here? Come here. I will take you to the castle. Hear this loud voice. Rowling soon realized it was Hagrid. He replied loudly, I'm here. I'll be right back. I don't know if it was his imagination. After he spoke, the people on the boat on the lake suddenly sped up. Rowling stopped thinking about Hogsmeade. There will be plenty of opportunities to go shopping inside in the future. Let's go and stay in the castle first. Luo Lin walked to the lake and saw the huge Hagrid with a beard on his face. Luo Lin still has a good impression of this hybrid giant. Are you Mr. Hagrid? Luo Lin asked. Hagrid was a little surprised. Professor Razma, do you know me? It's really an honor for me. Of course, you are a great person, and Hogwarts cannot live without you. Luo Lin said with a smile. Hagrid was immediately flattered, and his hands and feet were at a loss. No, you are exaggerating. I am just an ordinary key-keeper and gamekeeper. Then he remembered that he should also praise Razma, and said some kind words awkwardly. People like Professor Razma are indispensable to Hogwarts. Luo Lin was non-committal. Perhaps Hagrid was the only one in Hogwarts who respected his status as a professor. Maybe add Dumbledore. After all, it was Dumbledore who invited him personally. In the eyes of others, he, Rolin Razma, is a necromancer, an evil existence in the eyes of wizards, and obviously not worthy of respect. Luo Lin did not tell Hagrid this. Hagrid actually looks a lot like him. In Hogwarts, I'm afraid not many people respect Hagrid. Hagrid was almost kicked out of Hogwarts back then. If Dumbledore, who was still the professor of transfiguration at the time, had not persuaded everyone to keep him as a gamekeeper, he would have been no longer at Hogwarts. Such an experience. Many professors and staff at Hogwarts must have looked down upon him. It's not that I'm discriminating against him. I'm just saying that I don't respect him too much. This is why Hagrid seemed so happy and overwhelmed when he was praised by Luo Lin. Because for a long time in the past, Hagrid received almost no respect from others. Hagrid guided Luo Lin into the boat. Then he rowed the boat, quickly gliding across the smooth mirror-like lake surface, and headed towards the castle. The boat soon approached the cliff on which the castle stood. Hagrid also motioned to Luo Lin to lower his head to avoid being hit by the cliff. Hagrid rowed very fast. After a while, they came to a place similar to an underground dock. Hagrid took Luo Lin off the boat and stepped onto the cobblestone ground. Professor Razma, please follow me. Professor Dumbledore is waiting for you. Hagrid held up a lantern to light the way underground. Walk forward step by step. Luo Lin followed him and climbed up the tunnel in the rock. Finally, we came to a lawn outside the castle. Go up the steps from the lawn and stop in front of a huge oak door. Bang, bang, bang. Hagrid raised his huge fist and smashed the door 3 times. The door opened immediately. Standing inside was the silver-haired wizard wearing half-moon blue glasses, Albus Dumbledore. His hair was long, medicated, and could almost fit into his belt. The eyes are very wise. The nose is also long, but twisted. The seemingly ordinary old man with a crooked nose in front of him is actually a legend among wizards. The most recognized wizard today. Rowling and Dumbledore had already met in Azkaban. So after Dumbledore saw Rowling, he immediately came up and hugged him. Welcome to Hogwarts, Professor Razma. My pleasure, Professor Dumbledore. Luo Lin said politely. Dumbledore takes Rowling to the castle. Luo Lin looked at Hogwarts Castle at night. The surrounding stone walls were lit by blazing torches. It feels like a medieval castle. The roof is so high that you can barely see the ceiling. As soon as you enter the castle, you can see a luxurious marble staircase leading directly to the upper floor. Rowling followed Dumbledore forward, stepped onto the stairs of the castle, and soon arrived at Dumbledore's principal's office. Dumbledore did not chat much with Luo Lin, but went through Luo Lin's entry procedures first. looking at the contract on the parchment. Rolin has a feeling of going back to the Middle Ages. It's all modern society. Why do you still use parchment to sign the contract? Can't you just use a printer to print out the contract? I don't know if this parchment contract has any legal effect. Luo Lin complained in his heart, but still signed the contract without hesitation. From now on, he is the Hogwarts professor. Chapter 11. After signing the contract, Dumbledore looked more agreeable. He seemed to have just noticed black on Rolin's shoulder and asked softly, "Professor Rasma, it is?" "Oh, this is my owl." With that said, Rowling shook his shoulders. "Black, say hello to Professor Dumbledore." Black raised his skull, looked at Dumbledore, then stretched out his wings and bent down to salute. "Good evening, dear Mr. Dumbledore." A trace of surprise flashed in Dumbledore's eyes, and he also bent down and touched his chest with his hands. "Good evening, Miss Black." Then he looked at Luo Lin. "Professor Rasma, Miss Black is such a polite owl." I saw that Dumbledore had no discriminatory behavior towards undead creatures. Luo Lin nodded secretly. Dumbledore is indeed Dumbledore. Thank you for the compliment. Professor, what should I do next? Hear Rolin's question. Dumbledore pushed up his glasses, thought for a moment and said, "Our school's teachers' meeting will be held in 3 days, and corresponding arrangements will not be made until then. Well, I'll let Hagrid take you around the school tomorrow and get used to Hogwarts Castle. You have a day off the day after tomorrow, or I can take you around. This arrangement is not bad. Hogwarts Castle does take some getting used to. And if Dumbledore is willing to be a tour guide the day after tomorrow, he wants to take a tour of Hogsmeade Village." Okay. After Luo Lin agreed, Dumbledore personally arranged a professor's dormitory for him. As for where exactly the professor is going to live, Hogwarts has no clear requirements. You can live in the school dormitories. You can also live off campus, such as Hogsmeade Village, or just live in other cities. Then I use magic to commute to school every day. But most professors choose to live in castles. Luo Lin looked at his new dormitory. Compared to the luxury suites in Azkaban, the dormitories at Hogwarts seem a bit shabby. Although compared to the students' 5-bedroom, the single room is pretty good. But Luo Lin was a little afraid that he wouldn't adapt, mainly because I had a great time before. It is easy to go from frugality to luxury, but it is difficult to go from luxury to frugality. And after arriving in the dormitory, Luo Lin discovered another problem. He is hungry. There was nothing to eat on the train. The body is just an ordinary person's body. Dumbledore didn't notice this just now. When I arrived at the dormitory, I found that I was so hungry that my chest was pressed against my back. It's not too late yet. Dinner at Hogwarts must have just started. If you go, you can still catch up. Luo Lin thought for a while. Forget it. He was brought to the dormitory by Dumbledore. I am not that familiar with the various situations in the castle. It would be bad if you get lost later. After all, there are many peculiarities in the castle. Let's have something to eat first. Wait until tomorrow when Hagrid takes him around the castle. Think of this. Luo Lin waved his hand. The snacks in the storage space were lined up in front of him. He chose some snacks that were not too large but were relatively filling, and put the rest into the space. Eating too much at night is not good, as it can easily lead to weight gain. Let's talk about the big changes that Rolin had in Azkaban this year. In addition to strength, it must be fat. Eat well and sleep well in Azkaban. I just gave him some fat. Rolling before coming to Hogwarts. It has already been decided. You must lose weight. Don't have any fat at all. Even if it is difficult to develop 8-pack abs because of the undead aura. But heavy fat is completely unacceptable. After eating, Luo Lin disposed of the garbage, looked at the somewhat crude dormitory, and touched his chin. Looks like it needs to be decorated a little bit. He was prepared before he came. Open the storage space and living area, and throw some of the things on the open space. Blake, I have to thank you again for helping me decorate the room. Black replied calmly. As you wish, my master. After finishing speaking, Blake flapped his bone wings and flew into the air. The entire dormitory was turned around. Then start tidying up the dormitory. Luo Lin didn't do much housework. So when they were in Azkaban, these things were all left to Black and the others. Blake is basically the one who does the housework. There are 2 younger brothers under his command. Now that he has no younger brother, Blake has to do many things by himself. Even though Blake has a skeleton, you might think that she is very fragile. The world is supported by the power of the soul. As a high-level soul servant, Black's power far exceeds that of ordinary muggles, and can even be compared with some smaller giants. Cleaning up the housework is very fast. Encountered relatively large pieces of garbage, Black would gather together, and wait for Rolin to deal with it. Rolin's storage space has a special garbage partition. All the trash will be stored there. Then find a place to dispose of them. Blake was busy in the room. Luo Lin came outside the balcony and looked at the sky outside. The weather is pretty good today. Although the moon is not very bright, the stars are extremely bright. There were not many dark clouds in the sky, and there was a gentle breeze blowing on the balcony. Luo Lin enjoyed it a little. He took out a deck chair from the space, raised the height of the deck chair, and then lay on the balcony and looked at the scenery outside. Looking out from Hogwarts Castle, you can see the big lake outside more clearly, as well as the forest not far away. You can also see the forest huts that are still lit. That's Hagrid's residence. Enjoyed a quiet night for a while. Blake flapped his bone wings and came to the balcony. Master, the room is ready. Luo Lin lay so comfortably that he almost fell asleep. Hearing her words, he came back to his senses. Good. Luo Lin stretched his waist. I originally planned to put the recliner away, but then I thought about it and decided not to. Just put it here. It's good to come and enjoy the night view when you have nothing to do. And he still has spare ones in his space, so he won't be short of them if he needs to use them outside in the future. Rolin walked into the room. I found that the entire dormitory had been completely renovated. The dormitory that was originally a little messy suddenly became tidy. Moreover, the worn-out things have been piled up together, waiting for Luo Lin to deal with them. The beds were also replaced with new ones. Before coming here, Luo Lin bought the same big bed he had in Azkaban at an outside store. There are also 3 sofas, 1 large, 2 small, and placed near the outside. Luo Lin dared to say. Even if the previous landlord came, it would be difficult to recognize that this was the original dormitory. Blake arranged the dormitory according to Luo Lin's previous living habits. Luo Lin felt friendly at first sight. Back in the comfort zone again. Chapter 12. Rolin was very satisfied with the dormitory arranged by Blake. Thank you for your hard work, Blake. Serve the master. Blake's tone was the same as ever. Rolin stretched out a finger and gently tapped Blake's skull. An undead magic power spread through Blake's body through his fingers. Blake flapped his wings in enjoyment. His tone couldn't help but become a little cheerful. Thank you, master. Such a little magic power is nothing to Luo Lin. But for Blake, it was enough to further stabilize her soul power. Undead servants. Whether it is the lowest undead servant who has just developed wisdom, or a high-level undead servant with perfect mind like Blake, the most important thing is the stability of the soul. Their essence is the aggregation of soul power. Once the soul is unstable, this means that they will be in great danger and may collapse at any time. At this time, the importance of the necromancer is reflected. Necromancers can use their own magic power to help their soul servants stabilize their souls. This is also one of the best rewards that the necromancer can give to his soul servants. Certainly, Blake doesn't have to worry about the stability of his soul at all. She is also a person protected by the system. The Soul Servant module does more than just help Luo Lin control these soul servants. It can also maintain the stability of these soul servants forever. Unless Luo Lin wants to destroy a soul servant. But Blake also needed Rolin's magic. This not only maintains her survival, but also further enhances her power. Soul servants also have competition. Black's previous soul power could only be ranked in the middle among the 28 soul servants. She is very competitive. I have always been worried about this. While in Azkaban, Blake has hinted from time to time that he wants to increase his soul power. But Luo Lin has too many soul servants. It's never good to favor one over another. So every time Black's soul power increases, the soul power of others will also increase. The result is that the gap cannot be widened at all. Blake is still the one in the middle. Now Luo Lin alone injects magic into her and stabilizes her soul as a reward. Blake was naturally in a good mood. She suddenly felt that it was the best thing for her to come out and serve Luo Lin. Definitely take advantage of this opportunity. Try your best to please your master. Then quickly increase the soul power. Eating alone is obviously very happy. Blake thought he might be able to get out of the dark room before anyone else could. Raise the soul power to the first among all soul servants. She will be the eldest sister then. Not that nasty Malfoy. Blake became even more attentive as a result. Master, what should I do with this pile of things? Luo Lin felt a little strange about her change of attitude, but I didn't think much about it. Instead, he looked at the things on the ground with some hesitation. Trash he has received in the trash area. The things piled on the ground are old things from the previous dormitory. There are beds, chairs, and some daily utensils. There is no doubt that these things are of no use to Luo Lin. He has something new to replace. But to say that these things are rubbish and worthless is obviously not true. As an old thing from Hogwarts Castle, Luo Lin didn't know how long they had been in this dormitory. Maybe it's a medieval antique. Who knows if wizards have any means to preserve these things so that they can always be used. Just throw it away as trash. A bit not so good. Think about it. Luo Lin temporarily sent them to the utility area of his own space. Decided to wait until tomorrow to ask Dumbledore or Hagrid. If these were just plain old items, then it can be disposed of directly as garbage. If there is some other value, he kept it himself. Replace them when you leave Hogwarts. Get rid of the last pile of clutter. Even the dormitory is tidied up. Luo Lin took out his clothes from the living area and put them in the closet. Take out all kinds of daily necessities and place them in appropriate places. Get it all done. Luo Lin officially moved into the Hogwarts dormitory. It was already getting late. After Luo Lin washed himself, he lay on the bed and fell asleep. Blake didn't need sleep. According to past practice, she should be standing on the windowsill at this time, staring at Luo Lin sleeping. But she was in a good mood today, so I flapped my bone wings and flew around Luo Lin's dormitory. Until late at night, Blake felt a little bored. Then he returned to the windowsill. Stand on the windowsill. Blake suddenly thought of the scene at the station yesterday. The owls have their own cages. She is also an owl now. You should also have your own cage, right? Think about it this way. She suddenly felt that the windowsill no longer smelled good. Now she is a bird. If you have your own bird cage, isn't it equivalent to having your own house? Blake didn't know why, but he was obsessed with owning his own house. Blake became excited again at the thought of owning his own house. She decided, tomorrow I will apply to Luo Lin for my own bird cage. Otherwise, when you get along with other owls, you won't even have your own bird cage. Isn't this inferiority? Oh no, inferiority? Blake had completely forgotten. He is a bone bird. Other owls may not be so willing to get along with her. A night of silence. Luo Lin slept until dawn. He woke up from his sleep when the sun shone through the windowsill and hit his feet. Luo Lin felt refreshed at this time, except for being a little hungry. The whole person was in great spirits. Looking at Blake standing on the windowsill, he smiled and said hello. Good morning, Blake. Good morning, master. Blake flew up from the windowsill and flew to the wardrobe not far from the bed. He selected a set of clothes from it and carried it to the bed with his bone claws. After Luo Lin got dressed and washed, he began to be in a daze. That's not to say that I was completely in a daze. He was waiting for Hagrid to come over, but it took a while. Luo Lin suddenly realized a problem. Does Hagrid know where he is? Or will Hagrid come to him proactively? He wasn't sure. It would be a tragedy if Hagrid was also waiting for him to find him. Touching his withered belly, Luo Lin thought of an idea. Blake, have you seen the hut over there? The big man from yesterday lives in it. If he is still there, can you go and bring him to me? He came to the balcony and pointed to the location of the cabin by the forest. No problem, master. Blake is very active now. It flapped its little wings, flew off the balcony, and flew towards Hagrid's hut. Luo Lin kept watching Blake fly near the hut before returning to the house and sitting down. Next, it was time to wait for Hagrid to come over. Chapter 13. Blake flew out of Rolin's room, came directly to Hagrid's hut. Boom, boom, boom. She gently knocked on the door 3 times with her bone wings, and then asked in a cold voice, Is there anyone in there? Who? Hagrid's confused voice came out. I'm Black, Professor Rasma's owl. Blake said. Soon. The door opens. Hagrid's confused face appeared in front of Black. Owls can also talk? The next moment, he saw Blake. He took a sharp step back. Owl? You said you are an owl? Hagrid's eyes widened, and he looked directly at Black. It's rude to look at a lady like that, Mr. Hagrid, Blake reminded kindly. Hagrid quickly covered his eyes. Sorry, Miss Black, I'm rude. I had no idea Professor Rasma's owl would be you. He really didn't expect it. Hagrid had just seen Black yesterday, right on Rolin's shoulder. He knew the identity of Luo Lin necromancer. It's not surprising to have bones. I didn't think much about it. I just didn't expect that this bird-shaped skeleton was actually Luo Lin's owl. Hagrid worked hard to digest this information. Putting his hands down from his eyes, he looked at Blake. Miss Black, did Professor Rasma ask you to come to me? Blake nodded. Of course, the master is not familiar with Hogwarts Castle. I hope you can go there and show him about the castle. Hagrid suddenly realized. Yes, Professor Dumbledore told me yesterday that he asked me to take Professor Rasma around the castle today. But it's still early. Doesn't Professor Rasma have breakfast? I'm just having breakfast. Blake raised his head and looked at Hagrid as he said word by word, "The master is not familiar with the castle." Hagrid finally understood. It turns out that Professor Rasma hasn't had breakfast yet, and I don't want to wander around the castle casually. It was my negligence, Miss Black. Please lead the way. I will go find Professor Rasma and familiarize him with the castle, Hagrid said apologetically. Blake flapped his wings and flew up. Okay, Mr. Hagrid, please come with me. Watch Blake fly by flapping his bone wings. Hagrid had unstoppable curiosity in his eyes. How did this fly? Is it a kind of floating magic? Are the bone wings a decoration? With these curiosity, Hagrid followed Black all the way. Naturally, I met some people on the way. There are professors and students. In the strange eyes of these people, Hagrid came to Rasma's dormitory. Looking at the brand new scene in the dormitory, Hagrid almost thought he had come to the wrong place. He looked around the entire dormitory. The various brand new facilities made his eyes widen, especially the big bed in the dormitory. It looked so comfortable. Hagrid couldn't help but feel a little envious. He also wanted to sleep on such a comfortable bed. Luo Lin came to him at this time. Professor Rasma, good morning. Hagrid suppressed his surprise. Good morning, Hagrid. Finally waiting for you. Luo Lin smiled and said hello. This is completely true. His stomach had been waiting for Hagrid to come over. Sorry, Professor Rasma, I didn't take into account that this is your first time at Hogwarts. Hagrid scratched his head. It doesn't matter. Let's go now. My stomach has already started to growl. Luo Lin said impatiently. Hagrid nodded quickly. Of course, Professor Rasma. Let's go to the auditorium as our first stop. You follow me first. After breakfast, I will take you to familiarize yourself with the castle. As he said that, he looked at Blake beside him. By the way, is Miss Blake going? He actually wanted to ask Blake if he needed to eat, but look at Blake's bones. I basically know not to use it. Luo Lin did not decide for Blake and asked, Blake, do you want to come to the Great Hall with us? I will always stay with the master and wait for the master's instructions. Blake circled the room. Finally, the two of them bird and arrived outside the auditorium on the first floor. The Great Hall of Hogwarts is the dining hall, where students eat and receive mail and packages delivered by owls. Of course, the most important role of the auditorium is to host various grand events. There is a large double door. After walking in, Luo Lin looked around. This is a spacious hall. There are 4 long tables, corresponding to the 4 colleges. Directly in front is a long table, which is the guest seat and is used by the school's faculty and staff. There is a big golden chair in the center of the guest seat, which is the principal's seat, which is Dumbledore's position. 4 meals are served daily in the Hogwarts Great Hall. Breakfast, lunch, and 2 dinners. The 6 o'clock dinner was a casual dinner. There is a formal dinner at 8 o'clock, and diners must wear formal attire. By this time, breakfast time had passed for some time, but there were still many people in the auditorium. Luo Lin saw no one at the guest of honor seat. Hagrid explained from the side. Except for those more formal dinners, professors, and we rarely sit there. We usually just find a seat to eat. Luo Lin nodded. That's right. Normally, it would be too eye-catching to sit there and eat. Then, under the leadership of Hagrid, they found a seat in a corner and sat down. People in the restaurant naturally noticed the tall Hagrid and Luo Lin with a bone bird standing on his shoulders. News of Rowling's arrival. It has already spread throughout the entire academy. Both the faculty and staff and the students who stayed in the college knew that there was an additional necromancer professor in the school. They talked a lot. I was both surprised by Dumbledore's decision and worried about Rowling, the necromancer, staying at Hogwarts. Even if some people are interested in Luo Lin, nor would he contact Luo Lin rashly. People are always afraid of the unknown. Luo Lin is also a famous figure in the magic world. The necromancer, prisoner of Azkaban, escaped from prison twice. This kind of experience is enough to make countless people stay away from Luo Lin. Maybe only a relatively simple person like Hagrid wouldn't think so much. Where Luo Lin and the others sat, there were no other wizards around. This brought relief to the many young wizards who had already sat down. They were really afraid of Luo Lin sitting next to them, but there are also some little wizards who are a little disappointed. They were interested in Black on Rolin's shoulders. This is an undead bird, something you will never see in Hogwarts, and it is unlikely to be encountered outside. Some of the more courageous little wizards are already eager to try. They wanted to try to sit next to Rolin and see if they could contact Rolin and Blake. Chapter 14. Luo Lin didn't pay attention to the comments of people around him. All his attention now was on the food on the table. For long tables, the plates on every long table were filled with food. Because it's breakfast, There are not many varieties. That is sausage, fried eggs, bacon, bread, milk, oats, and the like. But Luo Lin was really hungry. When I saw these things, I immediately opened my index finger. He eagerly took something from each plate and ate it with grace and speed. Hagrid originally cooked and ate in his hut. Interrupted by Blake, now I can only eat in the auditorium. He chose bread and sausage. The two did not speak, eating breakfast together. Blake had nothing to do, but he kept paying attention to his surroundings. She turned her head curiously and looked at the entire restaurant 360 degrees. That's right. He really turned his head, and it was a 360-degree turn. The skull bird's head rotated directly on the neck bones, giving a panoramic view of the auditorium. Her two tiny skull eyes sparkled with green soul light. Undead servants often rely on soul power to sense the outside situation. When they have a physical body, eye-like organs will also evolve in a short period of time. The green light flashing in Blake's empty eyes was her visual organ. Compared with purely using soul power to detect, there are advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that it can save a lot of soul power, and there is almost no loss. The disadvantage is that it cannot detect in all directions, just like the human eye, which can only see things within one field of view. Blake turned his head around. In an instant, countless little wizards who were paying attention to her were stunned in surprise. They pointed at Black with dumbfounded eyes, and some even stuttered. Its head turned around. It's indeed the undead. It's really magical. I really want to get in touch with this undead spirit and know if it can speak. Blake also realized that he was causing the commotion. She didn't want to attract too much attention, because she knew Luo Lin didn't like it. Anyway, she has already finished observing the auditorium. If Luo Lin needs it in the future, she will at least not let her slip. Blake stood on Rolin's shoulders, lowered his head, and huddled up. See her like this. The onlookers were a little disappointed. They thought they could see more bizarre performances from Blake. Although Luo Lin was concentrating on cooking, but he also noticed something strange around him. He was accustomed to all this and didn't pay much attention to it. After what happened to the salesman on the train, Luo Lin found that his mental endurance had improved again. He was almost truly calm, especially since these are strangers. Finished breakfast quietly. Luo Lin touched his belly with satisfaction. The taste of various foods is average, which is quite good for him who is hungry. Wait until Hagrid has eaten and drank too. All the food in front of them disappeared from the plates. The dinner plate is as clean as ever again. Okay, Professor, should we rest here for a while? Or should we set off now? Hagrid burped and then asked. Luo Lin thought for a while. Let's go directly, there is no need to stay here. He wanted to know the situation of the castle as soon as possible, to avoid any accidents when you want to walk around the castle by yourself in the future. After all, he is also a professor now. It would be very embarrassing if you make a fool of yourself in front of the students, especially the first-year students who will be here after the holidays. By then, he must become a professor who understands Hogwarts. In this way, when the freshmen ask him questions, he can answer them. Otherwise, if you don't know anything about it, you won't look like a professor at all. And I finished learning about the castle today. Tomorrow, he also planned to go to Hogsmeade Village with Dumbledore. Okay, Professor, come with me. Hagrid got up and walked ahead, followed by Luo Lin. Professor, you need to pay more attention next time. I will introduce it to you in detail. Arriving at the marble stairs, Hagrid warned. Luo Lin nodded. Then Hagrid began to take Luo Lin to familiarize himself with the castle. There are a total of 142 staircases in Hogwarts Castle. This number is undoubtedly amazing. It doesn't matter if there are more. The most important thing is that their situations are all different. Some are wide and big, some are narrow and small. Some are very stable, others are wobbly. Some lead to different places every Friday. Some steps will suddenly disappear halfway through, and you have to remember where to jump. Just these stairs. Hagrid got to know Luo Lin for more than 2 hours. This is when they move relatively quickly. Luo Lin was very tired anyway. He is also the body of an ordinary person, so he had to lie half of his body on Blake and let Blake's strength support him, which made him feel much more relaxed. Hagrid looked on in surprise. He didn't expect that Blake, a small bone bird, could have such great power and couldn't help but admire. Miss Black is such a strong owl. He was sincere in his praise. Blake wasn't so happy. After all, no girl wants to be called strong, and she is only an owl in name, not a real owl. Hagrid did not notice this and continued to introduce the doors in Hogwarts. Same as stairs. There are also various doors in the castle. Some require a bit of politeness to open. Some need to insert the key very accurately in the right place. Some are not real doors at all, but walls with the appearance of doors. Trying to remember where these things are is impossible, because they change all the time. Only by relying on experience can we make a good judgment on what to do next. Hagrid is a man of experience. He also handed over his rich experience to Luo Lin without reservation. Luo Lin is quite smart. In one morning and half an afternoon, I basically mastered most of the tricks. The rest just takes a little more trying. With Blake's support, Luo Lin walked around the entire castle, still looking relatively relaxed. After getting familiar with Hogwarts Castle, he felt that his trip to be a professor was worthwhile. Luo Lin regarded coming to Hogwarts as a professor as a trip. Being a professor was his ticket to visit. Saw so many strange things. Totally worth the price of admission. He felt relaxed. As Hagrid wandered around, he became more and more confused. Except for those weird doors and stairs, there is another special feature in Hogwarts Castle. That is the ghost that may appear at any time. However, this morning plus half of the afternoon, Hagrid took Rolin with him, but he didn't meet a single ghost. Chapter 15. Where's the ghost? Hagrid couldn't help but mutter. His voice was small. Luo Lin didn't hear clearly. Mr. Hagrid, what's the matter? Hagrid reacted and scratched his head. Professor, I'm wondering why there are no ghosts. Ghost? Luo Lin was stunned for a moment. Yes, since he entered Hogwarts, I really haven't encountered a single ghost. Logically speaking, the ghosts of Hogwarts are very much alive. They often run around the castle. Some ghosts like to do good deeds and guide students, but some ghosts are quite nasty, especially Peeves, who loves to play pranks the most. He will try his best to stop you, either throwing things at you or following you to find opportunities to attack. This nasty ghost is the least favorite of the students at Hogwarts, but there's nothing they can do about it. Yes, normally if new people come, they will often hide behind the door and come out to scare people. However, let alone being scary today, not a single ghost appeared. This is what puzzles me the most. Hagrid's face was full of confusion. No ghosts, Luo Lin mused. It is said that he also felt the aura of the undead in Hogwarts, which is not too little. Could it be that those undead auras are emanating from ghosts? Are the ghosts at Hogwarts also a type of undead? That makes perfect sense. Necromancers are the natural enemies of all undead auras. Except for soul servants, any other undead will feel the disgusting aura from the necromancer and even fatal danger. Therefore, the undead must not dare to approach Luo Lin. If the ghosts of Hogwarts were among the undead, it was normal for them not to encounter ghosts. The reason why Luo Lin didn't consider this immediately, it's because he doesn't know how to define ghosts in this world. The ghosts in this world are special. It is not a ghost in Luo Lin's necromancer knowledge system. An undead ghost in the conventional sense. It almost never has its own consciousness, nor does it have any memories of its own life. They belong to a new race. Except for those particularly powerful beings, ordinary people are more often without consciousness after becoming ghosts of the undead. Instead, as time goes by, wisdom gradually develops like other undead souls. The ghosts of Hogwarts are different. They still retain memories and even obsessions from their lifetimes. Like Mr. Binns, even after death, he will not forget to teach. And their intelligence is very high, more like a special race similar to centaurs. Just like in the Ministry of Magic, there is a special ghost office. Ghosts objected to being classified as human, so the Ministry of Magic classified them as a separate category. The ghosts at Hogwarts are even more remarkable. They even have their own little circle. Hold your own ghost meeting to vote on matters related to them. Overall, undead are creatures that belong to the world of death. The ghosts of this world are existences between life and death. That's why Rowling is not sure whether the ghosts in Hogwarts are undead. But judging from today's situation, the ghosts in this world really belong to the undead. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare to approach him. I probably know the reason. Maybe it's because of my identity as a necromancer. Rowling explained a little to Hagrid. Hagrid suddenly realized, are ghosts still afraid of necromancers? Then your future life in the castle will definitely be very pleasant. For Hagrid, the ghost in the castle is also a headache. Or for most teachers and students. The only thing that made them uncomfortable in the castle were some ghosts, especially people like Peeves. Luo Lin didn't need to worry about any ghosts now. It really made Hagrid envious. If other people knew about it, they would probably be equally envious. Luo Lin smiled and didn't care. He actually wanted to get in touch with ghosts. After all, they are undead creatures. Professional counterpart. It would definitely be nice to research it. Think of this. Luo Lin decided to find an opportunity to cover up the aura of the undead on his body in the future, and then go to contact the undead. He had some fantastic ideas to experiment with. Get familiar with the castle. It's late afternoon. Just when Hagrid was about to say goodbye, a man and a cat appeared. The man came directly to the two of them. You are Rathma, and I am Argus Filch, the caretaker of Hogwarts. Look at the man in front of you with eyes like light bulbs. Luo Lin hasn't spoken yet. Hagrid frowned. Filch, this is Professor Razma. You should be more polite. Filch sneered. Okay, Razma, Professor. His deliberate pauses made people feel uncomfortable and sounded strange. Luo Lin was a little strange. How did you provoke Filch? Of course Filch knew. A squib with a somewhat perverted mentality. But the two have never been in contact and have no grudges. He shouldn't have this attitude. But since Filch showed hostility, Luo Lin would not tolerate him. He ignored Filch at all and said to Hagrid beside him, Mr. Hagrid, thank you for your help today. I'm a little tired. I'm going to go back and take a bath and sleep for a while before I take my leave. Hagrid was stunned for a moment, then nodded. Okay, Professor. See you next time? See you next time, Luo Lin said, and was about to leave. Seeing him ignoring himself so much, Filch was very angry. His eyes widened even more, and there seemed to be fire in them. Razma, how dare you ignore me? Luo Lin seemed to have just come to his senses. Hey, why is anyone talking? Mr. Hagrid, do you know? Hagrid understood that Luo Lin was deliberately angry with Filch and almost laughed out loud. Like the young wizards at Hogwarts, he didn't like Filch very much. Filch had always looked down on him, and the two had almost no contact. Based on this, of course he is on Luo Lin's side. Hagrid tried his best to hold back his laughter and nodded. Yes, Professor, there's no one around. You guys. Filch stretched out his trembling fingers and pointed at Luo Lin. I don't care what you are pretending to be, but I am here to warn you today. Don't use magic in the castle corridor, let alone violate school rules. Hear his words. Luo Lin finally seemed to see him and stared at his face. Filch was a little flustered by Luo Lin's gaze. Look at what I did. Is it wrong for me to ask you to abide by the rules? Luo Lin's lips curled up into a sneer. Mr. Filch, you seem to have forgotten that my identity is the Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts, and I am not one of those students you can punish at will. School rules are of no use to me. All I need to abide by are the rules and regulations related to teachers. You have no right to care about me. You are just a janitor. Chapter 16. Luo Lin's words made Filch's lungs almost explode with anger. His face turned red with anger. Trembling all over, he stared at Luo Lin. Luo Lin did not avoid his gaze at all, but stared straight at him with cold eyes. What's the matter, Mr. Filch? Is there something wrong with what I said? Luo Lin looked at him like this. The anger in Filch's heart was instantly extinguished. Wait until he calms down a little. I found that what Luo Lin said was indeed correct. He couldn't refute it at all. As the gatekeeper and so-called caretaker of the castle, Filch could only rely on his identity to scare and punish ordinary little wizards. Even George and Fred didn't take Fairy too seriously. He had absolutely no authority over the professors and other staff at the school, no matter what Rolin did, even if it violates the rules and regulations. Only Dumbledore or the school's board of trustees had the right to punish him. Think of this. Filch's face turned even more ugly, and his aura suddenly faded. He found that he really couldn't do anything to Luo Lin. Then he ran over aggressively to scare Luo Lin, but was scolded by Luo Lin instead. Wouldn't he look like a clown? Filch was very unwilling. Ever since I heard that the necromancer Luo Lin was coming, Filch felt very unhappy. It would be fine if other wizards could become professors. Why can a necromancer who should be in jail be a professor? But he, who comes from a wizarding family, is a squib and can only work as a janitor at Hogwarts. This caused an evil fire to rise in his heart. So I just happened to see Hagrid with a stranger in the distance. He immediately guessed Luo Lin's identity. The anger in his heart made him lose his mind. He rushed over directly. I want to use my seniority to teach Luo Lin a lesson. In his opinion, Rowling has just arrived at Hogwarts. Don't know much about Hogwarts. He could use this to scare Luo Lin into bowing to him. This way, even if Luo Lin reacts later, you will also feel that you are extremely stupid. Anyway, he didn't do anything against the rules and regulations. Luo Lin couldn't do anything to him. If Luo Lin loses his mind and takes action against him, Rowling will be expelled directly and returned to Azkaban again. Filch thought. That's where Rolin ends up. It can only be said that Filch is truly ignorant and fearless. He stayed at Hogwarts. I don't know what Luo Lin's situation is like outside. I just heard that Luo Lin was a necromancer and had been imprisoned in Azkaban before. If Filch knew that Rolin had escaped from Azkaban twice and nothing happened, you will understand that Luo Lin must be a ruthless person. It was impossible for him to dare to provoke Luo Lin at that time. But the reality is, Filch spent his whole day thinking about how to reprimand the little wizards in school who violated school rules. Don't pay attention to what's going on outside at all. He didn't know what kind of character Luo Lin was. Naturally, the wrong choice was made. At this point, Filch also noticed that Luo Lin was a bit difficult to deal with. But Luo Lin's words just now stung his fragile heart. He was very dissatisfied with Luo Lin, but I don't know what to say. Okay, I will remember Professor Rasma's words. I hope everything goes well for the professor in the future. In order not to continue to be embarrassed, Filch had no choice but to leave a blessing and then left in despair. Look at his back. Hagrid felt very happy and gave Luo Lin a thumbs up. Well done, Professor. Luo Lin smiled and did not mention Filch again. Then I will go back first. When I have the opportunity, I will visit your place as a guest. I wonder if Mr. Hagrid will welcome you? Hagrid's eyes lit up and he nodded quickly. Of course, it is my honor, and I will definitely be prepared to welcome the professor's arrival. Luo Lin and Hagrid just separated. Although he was angry with Filch just now, but it's also true. Shopping for a long time. Really tired. He wanted to go back and take a good bath and have a little rest. Black if he knew what he was thinking. There will definitely be some speechlessness, because it takes most of the day. Luo Lin basically lay on her body and didn't exert much effort at all. If you're tired like this, then if you really go shopping for a long time, wouldn't you be exhausted and fall down? But Blake is not paying attention to Rolin's thoughts now. Instead, he stared in the direction Filch left, the green light in his pupils flashing, wondering what he was thinking. After Luo Lin took Blake back, I simply took a shower and changed my clothes. Went to the cafeteria to have a meal again. It's a 6 o'clock dinner. No need to wear formal attire. When eating the lunch meal, Rolin also attracted much attention, mainly because the news that he came for dinner in the morning leaked out, and many people wanted to see what he looked like. By the time of the evening meal, not so many people stared at him. In fact, most people still have a fresh picture. Although there is a certain resistance to Luo Lin in my heart. But if you really hate Luo Lin, that's not the case. After all, they have never met Luo Lin, nor have they been in contact with Luo Lin. There is no such thing as hate without reason. They just kept Luo Lin at a distance. Dinner at Hogwarts was very sumptuous, but it was a formal dinner at 8 o'clock. This scene at 6 o'clock is almost like noon. Luo Lin did not choose to wait until 8 o'clock. After eating, he returned to the dormitory, read the textbook for 2 hours, and then went to bed. Because tomorrow, he was going to visit Hogsmeade with Dumbledore. Early the next morning, Luo Lin woke up from his sleep. Blake brought him some clothes. He doesn't have a Hogwarts uniform yet, but wears ordinary wizard robes. Speaking of which, he didn't buy these wizard robes himself. It was given to him by the Ministry of Magic, as a non-staff member of the Ministry of Magic. Although there are no special staff uniforms, but the Ministry of Magic still sends him some standard wizard robes every few months. Certainly, Luo Lin took the initiative to apply is also a very important reason. He only had a suit at the time. I want to try out the wizard robe. He was going to ask people from the Ministry of Magic to buy a few for him. Later I thought that I was also a member of the Ministry of Magic. How can you pay for a wizard's robe yourself? It must be free **X. So I applied. The Ministry of Magic readily agreed. I guess I feel that clothes aren't worth much anyway. And not just that one time. Every time the Ministry of Magic distributes clothing to its staff, it will also send him a few pieces by the way. So Luo Lin said that the Ministry of Magic's kindness is not over yet, and he definitely meant it. Loyalty. Change your clothes. Luo Lin went to the auditorium to have breakfast. Then we arrived at Dumbledore's office. When he came, Dumbledore hasn't come yet. No way. He could only wait outside the office. Waited for a while. Didn't wait for Dumbledore. Instead, I waited for another somewhat unexpected person. Chapter 17 appeared in front of Luo Lin. He was a gloomy man wearing a black robe with a large hooked nose. He is tall, has a cold expression, a mean look, and sallow skin. Upon seeing this image, Luo Lin had already recognized him, Professor Severus Snape, judging from his movements. Apparently, he also came to see Dumbledore. Normally, Rowling comes to Hogwarts for the first time. Professor Snape was not supposed to be known. Naturally, there is no need to have much contact with Snape. Just treat each other like normal people and say hello. However, before Rolin could figure out what words to say hello to Snape, Snape had already walked towards him first. Are you the new Razma? Hear his words. Luo Lin frowned slightly. Judging from the normal communication situation in this world, Snape's title was highly unusual. He did not use honorifics at all. He clearly knew that he was Razma and did not even mention the professor behind him. This is generally the case. Either Professor Snape has such a personality and is completely ungrateful. Either that or Snape had absolutely no respect for him. Rolin paid attention to Snape's expression. He felt it was a bit of both. Of course, Snape can't be called completely ungrateful, but his performance in interpersonal communication is also very poor. And he vaguely felt that Snape was hostile to him. The former Rolin can understand. It's a matter of character. The latter Luo Lin is very inexplicable. First Filch, then Snape. Have I provoked you? Why is everyone so hostile when they come up? Rowling couldn't understand what Snape was thinking at this time. Forget it, Filch. That's a psychopath. Any behavior is normal. What is Snape for? Snape has a very bad character, but he will not take the initiative to provoke others for no reason, especially those whom he does not know at all. Rowling and Snape at this time just didn't know each other. How could he react like this? All I can say is that this is so weird. Luo Lin couldn't figure it out, so he simply stopped thinking about it. Anyway, he came to Hogwarts to experience life, not to make friends. Just have a friend like Hagrid. Snape had no intention of communicating. Since Snape doesn't like him, so be it. In fact, although Rolin didn't like Snape that much, he didn't hate Snape either. He has read the original work. I just think Snape has a weird personality and is not easy to get along with. So his original plan was that after arriving at Hogwarts, he and Snape would be ordinary colleagues, and it would be best not to disturb each other. But judging from Snape's vaguely hostile attitude, I'm afraid even ordinary colleagues can't do it. Luo Lin was helpless and unhappy. What are you all doing to me? I'm just an ordinary necromancer. Never mind. Luo Lin didn't want to waste time on these inexplicable things. He decided to simply ignore Snape. If you can't be a normal colleague, then just be a stranger. You can't insist on pestering me if I ignore you, right? Snape didn't seem like the type to pester others. And wait until after school starts. All of Snape's attention would be on Harry and the others. Then I will definitely stop paying attention to him. It's fine if everyone just pretends to be strangers. Rowling didn't need a friend like Snape at all. After making up your mind, Luo Lin suddenly discovered another problem. That is, he is now the defense against the dark arts professor at Hogwarts. Where's Quirrell? What will happen to Professor Quirrell? Is he still a professor at Hogwarts? Or is he still at Hogwarts now? Luo Lin didn't see Professor Quirrell yesterday, so he couldn't tell whether Quirrell was still at Hogwarts. Professor Quirrell himself is not that important. What's important is the noseless weird socket on the back of his head. Lord Voldemort, the Socket Wizard, is an important character in Harry's world. He is the biggest villain that the protagonist Harry Potter has to face, and he is also an important presence that drives Harry forward and grows along the way. No Voldemort. The world of Harry Potter wouldn't be that exciting. Rowling comes to Hogwarts. In addition to experiencing life as a professor, it also treats Hogwarts as a large-scale stage play. I hope that as an audience, I can see the authentic famous scenes. If those famous scenes in the book didn't happen, wouldn't it be in vain? It's fun to watch various famous scenes up close. At least Rolin enjoyed doing it. Just like in his previous life, he went to various comic exhibitions. Every time he sees those cosplayers performing classic scenes from anime, he finds it very interesting. He would find this kind of virtual performance interesting, let alone come to this world in person and watch a real performance up close. Rowling has no intention of changing Harry's life, nor does he intend to interfere in the affairs of both parties. He is a necromancer. In fact, he originally belonged to the black magic camp. Even if Voldemort returns to the magical world and rules it, his treatment will probably not change. After all, Voldemort had no grievances against him. If he was willing to become a Death Eater, he might get better treatment. Certainly, the Ministry was treating him well now. He had no intention of changing the court. He was unwilling to let the gloomy Voldemort destroy his current comfortable living environment. But he didn't have to deal with Voldemort himself either. Voldemort would eventually die at the hands of Harry's men anyway. As long as no changes occur at major nodes, this is almost certain. As the manipulator behind the scenes, Dumbledore will ensure that things develop in the direction he wants. Luo Lin is just an ordinary necromancer and a professor at Hogwarts. What he needs is to teach honestly and then be an ordinary spectator on the side. Smile to see the flowers bloom and fall. Smile to see the clouds rise and relax. Isn't it beautiful? Luo Lin thought so much. In fact, only a short time passed. Professor Snape had already walked in front of him. Those cold eyes stared at him, as if waiting for his answer. Rowling glanced at Snape, nodded, and then ignored him. Nodding towards the person in front of him was Luo Lin's most basic courtesy. It means I got it. Then don't bother me. Black, who was on his shoulder, also nodded towards Snape, and also ignored Snape after that. Snape's already ugly face became even more ugly now. His brows were also knitted together tightly, more like an old bat. Snape looked Luo Lin up and down, and seeing that he really didn't speak, he spoke next. Rasma, I am Snape, Severus Snape, head of Slytherin and potions master at Hogwarts. Chapter 18. Snape's self-introduction. Luo Lin nodded again. It shows that he is a very polite person. Then still no words were spoken. Snape understood now. Luo Lin just didn't want to talk to him. He didn't care much about this, and still said to himself, I don't agree with Dumbledore's decision. You are a necromancer, a born black magician, and necromancers are countless times more dangerous than ordinary black magicians. You should stay in Azkaban instead of coming to school. Heard such words. Luo Lin finally spoke. Oh, he said oh but still didn't speak. His expression was extremely dull, and there was no sign of Snape in his eyes. Instead, he kept staring at the office door, waiting for Dumbledore's arrival. Seeing that Luo Lin still didn't speak, or even ignored him, Snape made a move. After being silent for a while, he continued, I don't know why Arbus insisted on letting you come to Hogwarts to be a professor, but you can't get my approval, and you can't get other people's approval. Remember, I will keep an eye on you in the days to come, and I will never let you do anything evil. He spoke one after another. Luo Lin was really impatient. Who are you hooking up with? Do I need your approval? Still staring at him. Okay. That's how you play it, right? Just keep bullying honest people. Then I will stare at you every day. Let's see if you, an old bat, tell others not to do evil things. Will you do it yourself? Although Luo Lin cannot completely remember the plot of the original work, but he still understood what Snape did. Snape never did anything bad that went against his principles. But the things Snape did were equally disgusting from Harry's perspective. This is not what a teacher should do at all. Just like he was giving Harry a hard time. Harry is just an 11-year-old kid. Place it anywhere in the world. They are all at an age when they need the care of adults. Snape had already begun to engage in school bullying. Or is it the campus bullying of students by teachers? In fact, teachers make things difficult for students, which is both big and small. If students are more serious, the teacher will definitely be in trouble. Students are not serious. That means being bullied. Harry was used to being bullied. Although he hated Snape, he never resisted within the rules. Actually, as a student, if you are bullied by a teacher, you should sue the teacher or even the principal. Harry was either naive and didn't think of this, or he was unwilling to tell other teachers or Dumbledore due to his self-esteem. Harry doesn't do that. Luo Lin, please help him. Who makes Luo Lin helpful? For Snape's upcoming school bullying, Luo Lin has completely focused on him. He will be ready to record the images. Wait until Snape is bullied on campus or has a clear preference for Slytherin. He was going to report to Dumbledore. As the principal, Dumbledore is a legendary wizard and a person with a good reputation. You have to deal with this kind of thing, right? Certainly. Snape would certainly not have been punished very severely, but it was enough to disgust him. Snape couldn't be allowed to have a moment of peace anyway. If Dumbledore didn't deal with it, he would go to the school board. If that didn't work, he would go directly to the Ministry of Magic. It was always going to make Snape uncomfortable. If you stare at me, I will make you uncomfortable. See who can outlast whom. He was bored anyway. You don't have to level up yourself. There is a system. He just needs to prepare for class. The rest of the time is spent having fun with Snape. Think of this. Looking at Snape's gloomy face in front of him, Luo Lin was no longer angry at all. You have to play like this. Let's all play together. Luo Lin recovered the most important attributes of his previous life. Fun person. If you treat everything with pleasure, you will never be angry. Rowling could already imagine that Snape would have a very amused look on his face. Let you target me. Also said that I am a born black magician. Don't tell me I don't consider myself a black magician. Even if it's true, I'm working for the Ministry of Magic now. Help them stop the Dementors from escaping. They should thank me. Wrong. Everyone in the wizarding world should thank me, including you, Snape. Seeing that Rowling still didn't answer, Snape looked at him deeply, then turned and left. Snape just left. Luo Lin felt a little strange. Didn't Snape come to see Dumbledore? How come you just ran away after saying a few harsh words? Did Snape come to see him specifically? Impossible. Luo Lin shook his head. How could Snape know that he was here and come to Dumbledore specifically to find him? There is a high probability that Snape is still looking for Dumbledore. Then why did he leave directly now? Before Luo Lin could think about this problem clearly, Dumbledore's voice came from far away. Professor Rasma, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Principal. By the way, Mr. Principal, you don't need to call me Professor Rasma. Just call me Luo Lin. Luo Lin said with a smile. As a young man, he still prefers to be called younger. He doesn't have so many British etiquette habits, so he insists on being called by others. Dumbledore smiled and nodded slightly. Okay, Luo Lin, then don't call me Mr. Principal. I prefer others to call me Professor than Principal. Good, Professor. Luo Lin, you came so early today. Do you want me to take you around today? Dumbledore had not forgotten what he said the day before yesterday. He promised that Luo Lin could rest today, or let him take him for a walk. Luo Lin nodded. Professor, I heard that Hogsmeade is not far away. It is the only village in the UK that is full of wizards. I have only heard rumors and read some records and books before. I have never seen it with my own eyes. I am very curious about it, so I want to take this opportunity today to visit Hogsmeade Village. Of course, no problem. Dumbledore walked into the principal's office, sat on his seat, and motioned for Rowling to sit down. You sit down and wait for me. I will take care of today's work, and then take you to Hogsmeade. Of course, Rolin has no problem. Just in time for him to see how Dumbledore works. It turned out that Dumbledore's job was too easy. Or maybe he didn't have much to do at all. There are so few decisions to be made at Hogwarts. After all, this magic school has a long history. The inheritance is very stable. No need to change frequently at all. Dumbledore, the principal, naturally didn't have much work to deal with. Unless there is an emergency, he will be busier. Chapter 19. Rowling sat in the principal's office and watched Dumbledore work. Result: Dumbledore only spent 10 minutes. Just finished all the things for the day. The rest of the time is completely at your disposal. Luo Lin looked envious. This was even more relaxing than his job in Azkaban. After all, after entering Azkaban for the third time, he had an agreement with the Ministry of Magic. There are about 10 minutes of recording sessions every day. The Ministry of Magic asked him to record what happened the previous day and then hand it over to the designated person. Almost like keeping a diary. Rolin was reluctant at first. Who is a serious person who keeps a diary? Later, the Ministry of Magic issued another record subsidy. He can only smell so good. Write in your diary for about 10 minutes every day. You can get a subsidy of about 50 galleons a month. Anyone would be willing to do such a good deed. Comparable to Dumbledore's work. Writing a diary can even seem a bit tedious. Not to mention that after Luo Lin finished writing the diary, he still had to arrange the work of the undead in Azkaban. As a caretaker of Azkaban, Luo Lin also needs to take stock of the situation in Azkaban and deal with various emergencies. Although he has not encountered any emergencies since he entered, he will encounter them one day. Of course, the matter is left to your soul servants. The labor available is equal. Luo Lin thought that if his soul servant did it, it would be equivalent to him doing it. The two are one. As a necromancer with 28 soul servants, Rowling even tried to apply for 28 wage subsidies from the Ministry of Magic. After all, he really has so many people. Then it was rejected mercilessly by the Ministry of Magic. Although it was not completely rejected, Luo Lin still received 4 wage subsidies as special funds to purchase bodies for undead servants. The money to buy the skeleton from the Bogenbach store came from this special fund. Luo Lin did not use his own small treasury. In other words, he has not used his small treasury at all so far. Almost everything on his body came from prostitution for free. Spending money is hard for him. Why spend money when you can have free **X? This is what Rolin lives for. Xia people always like to save money. Rolin is no exception. Watch as the number of gold galleons in the space continues to increase every month. He has a full sense of accomplishment. Think about wages. Rowling looked at Dumbledore again. He suddenly remembered. He didn't know the specific salary of a Hogwarts professor. When will it be sent? In what way? Who can I get it from? What is the salary of a professor? Luo Lin had no idea. It seems that I can ask Dumbledore later. Wages represent the fruits of labor, and Luo Lin cares too much about it. Looking at Dumbledore, who had put away his pen, the envy in Luo Lin's heart resurfaced. He couldn't help but think of one thing. If there is a chance in the future, can he be the principal of Hogwarts? The position of headmaster of Hogwarts seems to be quite good. The salary would definitely be more than what he got in Azkaban. The benefits will definitely be better. Social status will also be higher. Not too much triviality. At most, we need to protect world peace a little. Destroy the Socket Spirits conspiracy. Nothing else seems to be needed. Maybe have to deal with the Ministry of Magic? Luo Lin is already familiar with this. Everything looks fine. But Luo Lin also knew very well that it was a bit difficult to become a principal. Either the Ministry of Magic personally intervenes in Hogwarts, and the board of directors has to agree, or he has a high social reputation. Dumbledore took the initiative to abdicate in favor of others. No matter which aspect of the two, it is quite difficult for Luo Lin. After all, he is a necromancer, a notorious presence in the wizarding world. Want to be the best magic school principal? It sounds a bit wishful thinking, but it all depends on people. Luo Lin felt that he could try in this direction. Become the best. There's nothing to lose if it doesn't work. At worst, you can continue to go back to Azkaban to play with the Dementors and enjoy life. And looking at Dumbledore with white hair in front of him, Luo Lin felt that Dumbledore should retire. At such an old age, shouldn't we enjoy retirement life? By the way, I can focus more on taking care of Harry and others. Harry and the others are the saviors. Shouldn't they be protected by Grandpa? There is no need to bear too much pressure like now. In the end, you have to throw away your own life to plan. The responsibility to protect the world. Wouldn't it be better to leave them to young people? Dumbledore has worked hard all his life. Let him enjoy it. Just for a moment. Luo Lin already thought about the scene when he became a professor at Hogwarts. Then he will be like Dumbledore. Speak at the beginning of school, during holidays, and when important things happen. Wait until things get too big to be dealt with before you come out and deal with them. Simply perfect. The more Luo Lin thought about it, the more he felt it was pretty good. The position of headmaster of Hogwarts is indeed much better and more honorable than the position of warden of Azkaban. When we go on a blind date someday in the future, we will gain face by telling the truth. As a principal, the school will definitely allocate rooms, right? The corners of Luo Lin's mouth were slightly raised, and he looked full of energy. Dumbledore looked on with some confusion. He couldn't understand what Luo Lin was thinking. After all, there is nothing to do now. Luo Lin was already staring at him and starting to laugh. Dumbledore felt a little nervous. Although he believes that love is pure and should not be affected by gender, age, or other external factors. But that was for Grindelwald. He didn't want to be favored by Luo Lin. Dumbledore did not discriminate against Rowling's profession of necromancer. But when he thought that Luo Lin would make it into an undead creature after his death, he felt a chill. Luo Lin, it's time to go? Dumbledore reminded. Luo Lin came to his senses and nodded. Okay, Professor, let's go. Dumbledore breathed a sigh of relief. Judging from Luo Lin's performance, it's not that I have any special thoughts about him. I should be thinking about other things. He had no idea. Luo Lin has set his sights on his position as principal. Get out of the office. Luo Lin did not forget to glance at the principal's chair in the office. The principal takes turns and will come to my house next year. Wait for me. Luo Lin secretly made up his mind. Dumbledore led Rolling outside the castle. On the other side of the lake, follow another road for a short distance to Hogsmeade. This distance is neither far nor close. You can walk there, or you can disapparate directly without walking. The difference between the two is the time spent. Dumbledore also asked at this time, Luo Lin, should we walk there, or should I take you there? Chapter 20. Heard Dumbledore ask. Luo Lin thought for a while and chose to refuse. He didn't want to experience the feeling of being flushed down the toilet just yet. It's not far anyway, Professor. Why don't we walk there together? Just do some exercise along the way. After hearing what Rowling said, Dumbledore smiled. You're right, Luo Lin. A wizard must have a healthy body. Usually I just wander there. You know, walking is a very happy process. Subsequently, Dumbledore took Rolin towards Hogsmeade. En route, Luo Lin also asked about the situation in Hogsmeade Village. Hogsmeade Village, according to legend, was built at the same time as Hogwarts. The man who built it was called Hongies of Woodcroft. As far as I know, he is a wizard who came here to escape Muggle persecution. Now it has developed quite well. There are bars, shops, tea houses, etc. All kinds of daily needs can be bought here. If you need anything in the future, you can come here to buy it. The price is similar to Diagon Alley, and some are even cheaper. Dumbledore briefly introduced. By now they had passed Hogsmeade Station. Hogwarts Railway Station, the terminus of the Hogwarts Express, is built on the lakeside. A road leads to Hogwarts Castle. Another path leads to Hogsmeade. The station during the day is completely different from the station at night. At night, you can only see the darkness around you and the rugged paths. During the day, you can see a different scenery at the station. Luo Lin admired the scenery while walking. Dumbledore observed his situation and nodded secretly. He could tell. Luo Lin really enjoys this kind of wandering and also likes the unseen scenery around him. Such a wizard. It's hard to be a bad wizard. It is roughly the same as his previous evaluation after the investigation of Luo Lin. Luo Lin is an ordinary person who accidentally awakens as a necromancer. No tendency to become a black magician. Just living his life. Soon, Dumbledore took Rowling to Hogsmeade. Just entered Hogsmeade. Many people greeted Dumbledore. You can tell. Dumbledore has a high reputation here. Certainly, Dumbledore has a high reputation everywhere. After all, he is the most legendary and greatest wizard of the current era. After saying hello to the wizard in the village, Dumbledore took Rolin around the village. Hogwarts is not an isolated village. Of course, they also recognized Luo Lin, just different from those outside. They did not directly avoid Luo Lin like a snake or a scorpion. It's more like curiosity with a hint of vigilance. Rowling felt that this might be due to Dumbledore being around him. Dumbledore used his lofty reputation to briefly raise his reputation to ordinary rather than notorious. It's also possible that everyone felt that Dumbledore was by his side. He couldn't do anything even if he wanted to. Dumbledore will stop all evil. Rolin liked this feeling. As long as these people don't look at him with malicious eyes, he can face everyone's eyes calmly. Everyone can stay away from him. This is his wish. Not like Snape and Filch. Seeing him seemed like seeing an enemy. This will make him feel strangely uncomfortable. It took about 2 hours. Dumbledore took Rowling almost to the end of Hogsmeade. Among them are Davies and Band's store, which is a magic equipment store, and Fengya Wizard Clothing Store, which is a chain clothing store in the wizarding world. There are also places such as Honeyduke's Candy House, Mrs. Pettifo's Tea House, Post Office, Literary Quill House, Three Broomsticks Pub, Zuko's Magic Joke Shop, Pig's Head Pub, and so on. Luo Lin was dazzled by what he saw. It's really no worse than Diagon Alley. All kinds of things are available. Among them, Luo Lin's favorite is the Three Broomsticks Bar. This is a bar though, but lemonade and cherry juice are available inside. Lemonade and cherry juice are Rolin's favorite drinks. Before going to Azkaban, he had a drink almost every once in a while. Even then when at Azkaban, every month he would always ask the Ministry of Magic to prepare enough lemons and cherries for him, as well as a juicer, which he made himself. But his skills in making drinks are not very good. He didn't quite know how to season it. The drink produced can only be said to be drinkable, but it is far from delicious. The Three Broomsticks Bar is different. Not only the lemonade and cherry juice are delicious, but the proprietress Ms. Rosmerta also retains her charm. This is a graceful and beautiful lady. Just by looking at her, Luo Lin could drink an extra glass of lemonade, the kind without sugar. At noon, Rowling and Dumbledore had lunch at Mrs. Putty's tea house. They drank black tea here, ate some snacks, and bought some chocolates and fudge at the Honeyduke's Candy House not far away. Dumbledore was indeed the same as Luo Lin thought, very fond of sweets. He had drank ice-cold lemonade and butterbeer with Rolin at the Three Broomsticks. Now I eat a lot of honey and chocolate. It's like he has two stomachs. One is for sweets and the other is for other things. Eat and drink enough. In the afternoon, Dumbledore stayed with Rowling for a while and then prepared to leave. He couldn't spend the whole day hanging out with Luo Lin. Luo Lin also expressed his understanding. But when he was leaving, Luo Lin found someone. It was a pale young man with a thick scarf wrapped around his head. This image gave Luo Lin a sense of familiarity. And it didn't take long to figure out who this person was. Professor Quirinus Quirrell, the unlucky guy who was replaced by him as Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts. Poor guy with Voldemort living in the back of his head. Or Voldemort's temporary Horcrux. This is a young man who should have a bright future. But it was destroyed by Voldemort. Notice Luo Lin's gaze. Dumbledore also saw Quirrell. Oh, that's Professor Quirrell. He was supposed to be the Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts, but some time ago he went to accumulate practical experience in defense against the dark arts and got into trouble in the Dark Forest, so something changed. It must have been a serious psychological trauma. He became afraid of everything and became stammering. Severus told me that Professor Quirrell was not suitable to be a defense against the dark arts professor. I was hesitant at first, but then I thought of you and decided to let him rest for a while and adjust his mentality. This is also your colleague. Do you want to say hello to him? Chapter 21. Hear Dumbledore's words. Luo Lin thought for a while. Finally, he shook his head. Forget it, Professor. When all the professors are together, it won't be too late to get to know each other again. Otherwise, I'm afraid it might be awkward to meet at this time. After all, he had taken Professor Quirrell's place. Professor Quirrell would definitely feel a little uncomfortable when he saw him. Certainly. This is a secondary reason. The main reason was that he didn't want to come into contact with Voldemort right now. See the purple scarf wrapped around Professor Quirrell's head. Luo Lin knew that Voldemort had taken up residence. He didn't want to attract Voldemort's special attention at this time. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will be very annoying in the coming days. Voldemort is the monster that the protagonist team wants to fight. It has nothing to do with him. Hear his words. Dumbledore expressed his understanding. Okay, then I'll go back first. You can continue to walk around here, or you can go buy something. Tomorrow the school will hold a meeting of professors to discuss matters before the start of school. It will be in the afternoon. You can go directly to the auditorium then. I will tell you here, and I will not inform you specifically tomorrow. This is your first time participating, so don't miss it. Luo Lin nodded. I'll be on time, Professor. Dumbledore smiled and left. Before leaving, he said goodbye to Blake. Goodbye, Miss Black. After Luo Lin watched him leave, he pretended to look at Professor Quirrell casually. After making sure Professor Quirrell didn't notice him, he didn't stop either. But he didn't leave Hogsmeade. Instead, follow Dumbledore's advice. Get ready to buy something. His destination was the Divas and Band stores. Walking halfway, Blake, who had been staying quietly on his shoulder, spoke. Master, that old man has been staring at me just now. Is he trying to do something evil to me? Blake's tone was very cold. I said this not out of anger, but out of curiosity. Because since Rowling and Dumbledore met, Dumbledore would always stare at Black from time to time. Rolin was occasionally asked about Black. This naturally made Black feel that Dumbledore was paying too much attention to her. Luo Lin smiled slightly. That's definitely not the case. He should be just out of curiosity. After all, he is so old, and there is a high probability that he has never really come into contact with the undead servants of the necromancer, especially a soul servant with extremely high intelligence like you. But you can rest assured that he definitely has no idea about you. It's an old glass. Blake tilted his skull and bird head, very confused. Why doesn't Lousy have any thoughts about me? What is Lousy? Hearing Blake ask this question in a calm tone, Luo Lin suddenly wanted to laugh. He adjusted his expression and explained. What Lousy means is that he doesn't like women but likes men. Can you understand? Black suddenly realized. So that's it, then I understand. This old man is really special. And he greeted me before leaving, which was quite polite. Yeah. Luo Lin nodded and sighed. Dumbledore is indeed special. He is a wise man with profound knowledge and an unfettered legend. We can't look at him with ordinary eyes. After all, he is Dumbledore. Blake mused. Then Master, please remind him next time not to stare at me all the time. I am also a woman after all. This is not good. Luo Lin reacted. Yes, this is a problem. I will tell him for you. If Blake hadn't mentioned it, he would have almost forgotten it. Although the undead are often not differentiated between men and women, but his soul servant is different. Everyone has a defined gender. Blake is a female undead, who recognizes herself as a woman and thinks as a woman. So being stared at by Dumbledore, an old man, would definitely be a little uncomfortable. Think of this. Luo Lin couldn't help but look at Blake. Blake is still a bird of bones. His whole body was covered with white bones, but there was nothing else. You can't tell the gender from the bones. But if there are only bones, wouldn't it be equivalent to having no clothes? Blake, it looks like I have to buy you some clothes, Luo Lin said. Blake's voice revealed a hint of joy. Thank you, Master. Although for me, bones are my clothes, but for those who don't know, I may not wear clothes. By the way, Master, besides clothes, I also want a house, okay? House. Luo Lin was stunned for a moment. Blake wants a house. He hasn't even bought a house yet. So where will he get the money to buy a house for Blake? Houses are very expensive. Okay. Seeing Luo Lin misunderstood, Blake quickly explained. Master, I'm not talking about a human house. I'm talking about a house where birds live. Oh. Luo Lin breathed a sigh of relief. You can just say birdcage next time? Of course it's okay to just buy a birdcage. We'll go to Davies and Band stores later. They should sell owl cages. I'll buy you one then. Good Master. Blake sounded cheerful. She is about to become a homeowner now. Rolin just took Black with him. Went all the way to Divas and Band store. This is a magic equipment store. Dumbledore had already taken him here for a brief tour. There are all kinds of magic props and equipment for sale inside. Quidditch game props, anti-monster glasses, memory balls, etc. are all available. Luo Lin had only seen it briefly before. I am a little interested in some props and plan to come back to have a look and decide whether to buy them. Came to the store again. After refusing the clerk's escort, Luo Lin began to look at the magic props sold inside. Deformed lizard skin bag, a small pocket that can be used to store items. Only the owner can take out the contents. It may look small from the outside, but it can hold a lot of things inside. Crackle Explosion Cards is a card game among wizards. Cards will explode at any time during the game. He had heard of this card in Azkaban, and heard that it was very popular among young wizards. Crystal Ball, a magic prop used for divination. Wizard chess corresponds to Muggle chess. The chess played by wizards has moving pieces and thoughts of its own. Muggle alarms sound an alarm after being touched by someone without magical abilities. Invisible ink is a very special ink that can make written words disappear. Either use the visible eraser, or you can only use the current spell. Look at the magic props one by one. Luo Lin also picked two items that he was more interested in, the Crackling Explosion Cards and the Wizard Chess, and planned to take them back to the castle to play. Chapter 22. Just when Luo Lin took two items and was about to buy another owl cage, he left. Suddenly I found something spinning and shining on the shelf next to me. He came forward with some doubts. Picked up this top that looked like it was made of glass. Why did it suddenly light up? What is this thing? Luo Lin took the glass top and asked the clerk not far away. Its name is the Looking Glass. It is a black magic detector. If there is a suspicious person around, it will light up and spin. The clerk introduced the speculum and at the same time looked at Luo Lin with a strange expression. Originally, when the looking glass lit up, she was already so frightened that she went to find someone, but she soon remembered that Rowling was brought here by Dumbledore himself. He also remembered Luo Lin's identity, a necromancer. It is normal for the necromancer to appear nearby and the looking glass to rotate and light up. Hear what the looking glass does. Luo Lin was stunned. So that's it. But there must be something wrong with the looking glass, and he is not a suspicious person. Why are you spinning it and making it shine? Although I thought so in my heart. Luo Lin still got it in his hand. As a professor of defense against the dark arts, the looking glass is a good prop that can be used to assist in class. At least students can know what black magic is and what is not. And the sight glass is much more useful than any other alarm. As long as it's bright. That basically means there are suspicious people around. This is when you need to be more vigilant. Luo Lin took 3 magic items and bought an owl cage, then left the store. After leaving the Davies and Band stores, he came to the Fengya Wizard clothing store not far away. This is a large chain of wizarding clothing stores. There are branches in London and Paris. When Luo Lin came here, he naturally ordered clothes for Blake. Ordinary owls don't wear clothes. In addition to their thick feathers as clothing, it is also because their flying ability will be weakened after wearing clothes. Blake is different. Her flight does not rely on the power of wings, but on the power of her soul. Flapping your wings when flying is just a habit, so her flight wouldn't be affected at all if she was wearing clothes. Enter the clothing store. Luo Lin made his request. The shop owner looked a little weird, but as a large chain store, he still gave his quotation. 12 gold galleons, 3 sets of clothes. This is obviously a very expensive price. Normally, a set of clothes worn by an owl cannot cost more than 4 gold galleons. But as it is a brand name product and it is specially customized, it will naturally cost more for craftsmanship. Heard the price. Luo Lin frowned. It's so expensive. Although buying clothes for Blake was definitely not a waste of money from his own coffers, it still made him feel a little distressed. He calculated the subsidies given to the undead by the Ministry of Magic and found that there was still plenty of money left. Think about it. Blake is the only one among all the undead servants who comes out to work, so it is normal to get more subsidies. Luo Lin finally nodded. Okay, then when will I pick it up? 3 days later, the store manager said with a smile. After the staff in the store measured Blake's size, Rolin took Black and left. 12 gold galleons for clothes, plus a gold galleons for a bird cage. Blake spent that much on one bird today. It even cost a little less than Rolin. If only the Weasleys knew he spent 12 gold galleons on clothes for a bird, they would definitely feel aggrieved by the pitiful savings in their Gringotts vaults. It can only be said that Luo Lin is still rich. Wrong. It should be said that the Ministry of Magic still has money. What Luo Lin spent today was only the undead subsidy issued by the Ministry of Magic. His coffers remained untouched. As for him spending the undead allowance to buy things for himself, Isn't this a matter of course? The things he bought were equivalent to the things purchased by the undead servants. They are one. As the saying goes, what's yours is mine, and what's mine is still mine. Black had no idea that the owner Luo Lin had embezzled their hard-earned money. She is now happy to have a new home and new clothes. The new clothes haven't arrived yet. The new home has been arrived. Black wasn't standing on Rolin's shoulders this time. Instead, she stayed in the owl cage and let Luo Lin carry her back. We also said several words along the way. Discuss with Luo Lin what kind of clothes Fengya Wizard Clothing Store will give her. The cold voice was tinged with joy. Where Luo Lin came along. Return the way you came. He did not return to the castle immediately. Instead, they first came to the forest house where Hagrid lived. Boom, boom, boom. Luo Lin knocked on the door 3 times. Who is it? It's me, Rolin Rasma. Hear his voice. Suddenly there was the sound of rapid footsteps inside. Soon the door was opened, and Luo Lin saw Hagrid's big face covered with beards. Professor Rasma, why are you here? Luo Lin lifted the thing on his right hand. Dumbledore and I went to visit Hogsmeade this morning and brought you some gifts. Hagrid's eyes lit up. He looked at the outer packaging of the items he was holding and was very surprised. It's candy from Honeyduke's candy shop. Obviously. Hagrid also bought candy in the store and seemed to like it very much. Luo Lin nodded. Yes, because I don't know what you like to eat. I bought some of the various candies in there, as well as their homemade chocolate. Hagrid was a little flattered and at a loss. Thank you so much, Professor Rasma. Their candies are delicious. I like them all, especially the chocolate. Luo Lin handed the gift in his hand to Hagrid. Hagrid turned sideways in hindsight. Please come in, Professor, and sit in the room for a while. I will make you tea. Okay. Luo Lin was also very curious about Hagrid's hut. After entering the door, he looked around. Hagrid's hut has only one room. Ham and pheasant hung from the ceiling. There is a fireplace next to it, with a huge wooden table and wooden chairs placed in front of the fireplace. There is also a large bed in the corner. The bed is made of rag quilts. There are also some sundries placed in various corners. Mole skin coat, crossbow, pink umbrella, and some ingredients for making food. Finally, there is the Neapolitan Mastiff chained to the foot of the bed. This dog was roaring dully at the stranger Luo Lin. Hagrid patted its head without hesitation. Yeah, be polite. Yaya fell silent for a moment, sitting on the ground and staring at his big eyes. Luo Lin doesn't like dogs, nor does he hate dogs. Strictly speaking, he is half a dog lover. Because his appetite is relatively small, he can only save half of the dog. But for pet dogs and stray wild dogs, he will never save. Chapter 23. Rowling sat in Hagrid's hut for half an hour, tasted the tea brewed by Hagrid himself. I also ate a piece of rock cake. It was a little snack that Hagrid baked himself. It can only be said to be a good teeth-grinding item. After eating the rock cake, Luo Lin felt that his teeth had improved. When leaving the cabin by the woods, Hagrid even came out specially and sent him to the castle. You can tell. Hagrid was grateful that Rowling gave him the gift. After returning to the castle, Rolin put Black's birdcage in place. The remaining things had already been thrown into space by him. He has not studied wizard chess and crackling playing cards for the time being. For both of these things, you need to know a few more people so that they can be fun to play with. If you have the opportunity, you can hang out with Hagrid or new school staff. What he does in the afternoon is more consistent now. That is reading. Textbook of Defense Against the Dark Arts. Hogwarts Defense Against the Dark Arts textbook for 1st to 4th years. It's called Dark Magic, a guide to self-defense. Luo Lin has been mainly reading this book recently. It introduces many dark creatures and some defensive spells. Werewolves, zombies, dominatrixes, wand lighting spell, smoke screen spell, repel spell, magic barrier extinguishing spell, etc. He needs to study these basics first. In the remaining 2 months, we will gradually study in depth. According to the current progress, 2 months is definitely enough time. It's not like he's trying to become a defense against the dark arts master. As long as you can serve as a qualified professor who teaches according to the textbook and can answer students' questions. No shame. Bottom line Luo Lin has set for himself. After reading the book, have dinner, and then go to bed. This was the end of Luo Lin's 3rd day at Hogwarts. Tomorrow, it's a staff meeting at Hogwarts. Luo Lin has always believed that going to bed early and getting up early is good for your health. So go to bed early. Woke up early the next morning. He was now thoroughly familiar with all the peculiarities of the castle. After breakfast and lunch, the time comes in the afternoon. Luo Lin entered the auditorium again. The auditorium at this time was not empty after dinner, but there are a lot of adult wizards. Luo Lin knew that these people were employees of Hogwarts. Most are professors. Rolin brought Blake to the meeting. Everyone recognized him immediately. Most people remained indifferent. A small number of people are curious about him. Only Hagrid came forward. He had just helped others arrange the venue. At this time, he walked to Luo Lin and whispered, "Professor Rasma, you don't know the professors here, do you? Do you need me to introduce them to you?" Hagrid thought he was quiet. In fact, it was already too big for Luo Lin. The surrounding wizards had obviously heard it too. Luo Lin smiled and nodded. "Then I'll trouble you." Then Hagrid began to introduce the school's professors to Luo Lin. The first is the deans of the 4 colleges. Head of Slytherin, Professor Snape, Professor of Potions. Head of Gryffindor, Professor McGonagall, and Professor of Transfiguration. Head of Ravenclaw, Professor Flitwick, Professor of Charms. Head of Hufflepuff, Professor Sprout, Professor of Herbology. In addition to the deans of these 4 colleges, the remaining ones are the Flying Lesson Professor, Mrs. Huachi, Professor of Care of Magical Creatures, Professor Byrne, Professor of History of Magic, Professor Binns, Professor of Divination, Professor Trelawney, Astronomy Class Professor, Professor Sinistra. When Hagrid finished his introduction, about 10 minutes have passed. Luo Lin has also matched the names of these professors with their appearances in his mind. At least when we meet and say hello in the future, we won't call him by the wrong name. Certainly, the premise is that others are willing to say hello to him. Rowling would not say hello to people like Professor Snape and Filch. This time, Dumbledore also entered the Great Hall. The meeting is about to begin. The professors took their seats. Luo Lin sat next to Hagrid. The meeting begins. Dumbledore first summarized the situation at Hogwarts in the previous school year, recognizing the hard work of the Hogwarts professors, then start arranging things for this year. This aspect is mainly responsible for Vice President Professor McGonagall. The first is the issue of enrollment. Admissions to Hogwarts are magical. There is a special quill in the school and a magical admission book. Whenever a British child with magical abilities is born, a magical quill will write his or her name on the admission book. Vice President Professor McGonagall opens this admission book every year. According to the list above, send Hogwarts admission notices to those little wizards who are about to turn 11. At the same time, the admission notice comes with a long list of necessary supplies to remind all new students what they need to buy. This acceptance letter is written on parchment, sent by owl to recipient. For Muggle-born students, Hogwarts will send an employee as a special messenger to deliver the letter directly to the students and explain the situation clearly to the student's guardian. The school can use magic to know whether the student has seen the admission notice. If you haven't seen it, admission notices will be mailed continuously until students see the content. The main thing about this meeting, they are the employees who will be arranged to deliver letters to young wizards from Muggle families. The number of little wizards and wizards born this year is not that many. Professor McGonagall decided to let each professor draw lots. She divided the entire UK into 6 regions. In other words, 6 professors are needed to go to these 6 areas to act as special messengers. Luo Lin stepped forward and twitched casually. I found that I didn't know whether to say I was lucky or not. He got it. And the draw was still in London and surrounding areas. That is to say, he has only been at school for 2 days, going back to London soon. After drawing lots, Mag explained the process again. For example, how to introduce the wizarding world and Hogwarts to students, and how to explain the situation to students' parents and guardians. How to take students to Diagon Alley to buy the items on the list. There is also the matter of providing student aid funds to those Muggle families whose family conditions are not wealthy. Luo Lin listened to these contents carefully, basically understand what he should do. After talking about the enrollment, Professor McGonagall arranged some regular things. Finally, Dumbledore mentioned the opening party. Let all professors attend on time. This meeting is over. Luo Lin followed Hagrid and walked out of the auditorium. At this time, less than 2 hours had passed. The meeting went very quickly. No one talks nonsense. While walking, Hagrid also taught Luo Lin his experience. After so many years at Hogwarts, he is very knowledgeable about the various procedures at Hogwarts. Luo Lin gained a lot of knowledge. Chapter 24. Farewell, Hagrid. Luo Lin returned to the dormitory. Blake happily returned to his little cage. Luo Lin finally discovered it. Ever since there was a bird cage, Blake always comes back to the dormitory from outside. The first thing to do is definitely run to the little cage and spend some time there. It can only be said that Blake really likes his house. Master, are we going back to London again? Will we go back to Azkaban? After lying down in the cage, Blake asked his question. Luo Lin sat on the sofa, thought for a while, and shook his head. I'm not sure. If the Ministry of Magic needs it, I can go back. But if they don't need it, it doesn't matter if they can't go back. But the Ministry of Magic is definitely going. I want to ask if my salary at the Ministry of Magic and your subsidy are still there. He now earns a salary as a Hogwarts professor, but he also works for the Ministry of Magic. According to his ideas, the ministry should still pay him a salary. Certainly, this may require him to convince the head of the Ministry of Magic. After all, he made an outstanding contribution to London's security. Without his words, the Dementors have just left Azkaban. That's when the real danger comes. Rowling thought this was a very good reason, and it was unlikely that the Ministry of Magic would disagree. Okay, one more thing, Master. We are going to send admission notices to students from Muggle families. According to what Professor McGonagall said, you can use phantom teleportation to take the students to Diagon Alley, because some students are far away from Diagon Alley. Master, you don't have the ability to apparate. So how do you take students who live far away to Diagon Alley? Do you rely on the train? Blake asked again. Luo Lin also thought about this problem. It's almost impossible to learn to apparate in a short time. His subclass level is too low. Basically, you can only learn the basic spells. More difficult spells cannot be learned until higher levels. Then his method of taking students to Diagon Alley is very simple. Only Muggle transport can be used. For a wizard, especially a Hogwarts professor, it's a bit low to be honest. Others traveled by car when they were Muggles. Even if you become a wizard, you still travel by car. So isn't this wizard in vain? Professor McGonagall Snape taught them all how to apparate. You can take students to the leaky cauldron in a snap. How handsome. It would be too embarrassing if he could only take a car or even a train when it was Luo Lin's turn. So Luo Lin was thinking about how he should surprise the little wizard so as not to look embarrassed. Blake was heard speaking at this time. He suddenly looked at Blake. Blake, what's your top speed? Under normal circumstances, in imperial terms, it's about 60 miles. Blake thought for a moment and replied. As for the fastest, it requires a lot of soul power, and I have no experience. 60 miles, which is close to 100 kilometers per hour. This speed is neither fast nor slow among the undead. At least compared to those bulky undead, the speed is quite fast. What if I infuse you with enough undead aura? Luo Lin asked again. Upon hearing this, Blake instantly became energetic. Is it enough? If you don't worry about the consumption of soul power, you can at least reach a speed of more than 150 miles per hour. 150 miles, that is a speed of about 250 kilometers per hour. We can already catch the high-speed train. Very good. Luo Lin nodded with satisfaction. Then the task of transporting students to Diagon Alley this time will be left to you. Blake reacted. It turns out that the reason why he asked her about her speed was because he wanted her to carry the students to Diagon Alley. She regained her coolness. Okay, Master, but there is one more thing. If I bring students with me, Master, how should you go to Diagon Alley? Yes. Luo Lin reacted. It's not like he doesn't have the means to catch up with Black's speed, but his methods are a bit big. And unlike Blake, he has the innate ability to fly. Basically, they move quickly on the ground. Nothing fancy. What should we do? Luo Lin fell into thought. Blake proposed at this time. Master, why don't you let one of your companions come out? Let me take the master, and the other companion will take the students. Luo Lin's eyes lit up. What a great idea. One Blake is not enough. Wouldn't two be enough? He didn't have anything else. He has 28 soul servants. Moreover, the body is made of bones. Let's not talk about whether they are damaged if they are not used, but they don't feel bad if they are used. But this case raises another problem. Who should be released? Luo Lin knew it. All the undead servants who were locked in the small dark room wanted to come out. In this way, no matter which one he chooses, it seems to be a bit biased. Blake flew out of the birdcage and stood on Rolin's shoulders, waiting for Rolin's decision. In her heart, it doesn't matter who comes out, as long as it's not that annoying Malfoy. Luo Lin struggled for a moment, and then made a decision. Blake, you make your choice. The one who is released this time will probably not be locked up in a dark room in a short time. After arriving at Hogwarts, Rowling found that the wizards at Hogwarts did not have such a strong objection to undead people like Black. In other words, Blake's image is more deceptive and seems non-threatening. Coupled with the fact that it was Luo Lin's undead servant, other wizards were not so repulsive. So he thought that maybe one or two more soul servants could be released, and it wouldn't cause too much trouble. Certainly. Definitely not too much. What if Luo Lin suddenly had a lot of undead around him? The wizards will definitely have random thoughts again. Hear what Luo Lin said. Blake froze. Unexpectedly, Luo Lin would let her make the decision, and it was a long-term quota. Then she would have to think about it carefully. You must choose the one with a better relationship, so that when you serve the master together in the future, there won't be too many disputes. The other party also needs to remember her favor. So you have to choose an honest person. Blake instantly locked a candidate in his mind. Master, how is Longbottom doing? Longbottom?
Yes.
For Luo Lin, it doesn't matter who he is. Longbottom is similar to Luo Lin and belongs to the group with medium soul power. Not as good as Malfoy and Crouch, but still better than Weasley and Parkinson. Are you sure you want Longbottom to come out? Luo Lin finally confirmed. Black nodded his skull. Just Longbottom. He is more honest and won't cause trouble. Ron nodded when he heard this. Not causing trouble is a plus. You must know that although his soul servant is completely loyal to him, he also has his own personality. A few of them can cause trouble. Chapter 25. Black wanted Longbottom to come out. Luo Lin has no objection. As he began to recall his impression of Longbottom, I recalled it for a long time. Found no impact at all. All he remembered was Longbottom's voice calling his master. Mainly the same as what Blake said. Longbottom was too honest. It's so honest that it's a bit exaggerated. You can often go a whole day without saying a word. Unless Luo Lin calls him, he will answer the call. It is really difficult for Luo Lin to remember him with such a character. However, this also proves that Longbottom is indeed an honest man and will not cause trouble for him. Think of this. Luo Lin no longer hesitated. The second soul servant who came out of the small dark room was definitely Longbottom. After the candidate is determined, the rest will be much simpler. He took out all the loose bones from the storage space. Black, Longbottom needs to be a small creature like you. It cannot be too big, nor can it be a humanoid skeleton. Otherwise, if it is too eye-catching, there will definitely be trouble. Rolin looked at Blake. Blake nodded. Understood, master. Leave it to me. I will help him piece together a complete body. Look at the high pile of bones on the ground. Blake sprang into action. He picks and chooses with the power of his soul. A large pile of bone residues, broken bones, bone fragments, and complete bones were quickly picked out. Use these bones. Blake simply put the pieces together to create a three-dimensional skeleton. Luo Lin took a look. The skeleton was found to be the expected creature. Cat. For wizards. Cats and owls are almost their most common pets. Owls are basically one per person. And most wizards also have a cat. Rolin asked for a creature with a small frame. There are not many options to choose from, either a cat, a small dog, a mouse, a toad, or the like. Blake is a girl. Rats, toads, and the like are definitely not considered. Cats are more in line with her aesthetic. But look at the cat skeleton in front of you. Luo Lin looked a little weird. Black has previously said that his bird skeletons were too haphazard. As a result, the cat skeleton she made for Longbottom was no better than the bird skeleton made by Luo Lin. At first glance, I didn't think much of it. Indeed, as Blake said, it is a complete skeleton. But completeness doesn't mean it looks good. Although not as crooked as Luo Lin. But it doesn't look like a very healthy cat. Not to mention the crooked tail. One of the legs is even shorter. It was as if he noticed Luo Lin's gaze. Blake quickly explained. The master didn't know something. I left this shortcoming specially. When the soul servant enters a new body, he needs to adapt to the new body. I have left some shortcomings for Longbottom. When the time comes, let him modify his body again so that he can control the entire body frame as freely as I can. What she said seemed to make sense. Luo Lin twitched the corner of his mouth. If he hadn't known that a perfect skeleton was more suitable for being possessed by a soul servant, he would have really believed it. Black also knew that his words had little credibility. It was okay to fool a layman, but obviously not good enough to fool the master. So he quickly urged Luo Lin, Master, let Longbottom out quickly. He must be very uncomfortable in the dark room. Luo Lin didn't bother with the issue of the cat skeleton. Anyway, Blake had assembled and decorated the skeleton himself, and Longbottom would definitely be able to do it too. He opened the Soul Servant module. Longbottom's name was chosen. The next moment, a green soul fire emerged from Luo Lin's fingertips. He pointed. Green soul fire poured into the cat skeleton in front of him. After a while, only a clicking sound was heard. The cat skeleton in front of Luo Lin started to move, and the cat skeleton actually made a meowing sound. Hear a meow. Blake couldn't help but stretched out his wings and patted the cat skeleton. Longbottom, you are a skeleton. not a real cat. Can you please stop making cat sounds? But Malfoy and the others told me that if you enter the skeleton of any creature, you must act as that creature. Only in this way can the fit between the soul and the skeleton be improved. A simple and honest male voice came from the cat skeleton. Unlike women with the male name Black, Longbottom is a boy from name to gender. And his voice really sounded too honest. The kind of person who is so honest that you can tell right away that he is suitable for taking over. Hear Longbottom's words. Blake couldn't help but stretched out his bone wings to cover his skull. Do you believe what Malfoy and the others say? They are obviously lying to you. Didn't Malfoy possess a rat before? When did you hear him make rat noises? Longbottom was stunned for a moment. Yes, it seems that he has never made the sounds of various creatures. Malfoy and the others actually lied to me again. I don't believe them anymore. Blake tilted his head to the side. He didn't have any hope. Malfoy and the others had teased Longbottom countless times. However, Longbottom would still be fooled every time, and he would believe whatever others said. This kind of personality aspect is difficult to change. Black didn't think Longbottom could change anytime soon. If Black and his friends hadn't been by Longbottom's side before, Longbottom would have been deceived even more miserably. Seeing Longbottom's silly look, Luo Lin was slightly worried. It's true that honest people are good and won't get into trouble, but are overly honest people like Longbottom too easily deceived? But he looked at Blake aside. He felt slightly relieved. With Blake watching from the side, there shouldn't be any problems. By the way, Longbottom, what is your approximate speed when flying? Luo Lin didn't forget to ask this question. Speed? Master, my speed is almost 120 miles per hour. Longbottom's voice sounded reassuring. 102. Luo Lin was a little surprised. Unexpectedly, this honest Longbottom was so much faster than Black. To make sure there was no mistake, he asked again, is this a normal speed? One that doesn't consume too much soul power? Yes, Master. Hear Longbottom's answer. Blake looked a little sour on the side. Master, Longbottom is just a big fool. He has a stronger soul and more soul power. Oh. Luo Lin also thought about it. Black's friend Longbottom's soul power is also ranked high among the 28 soul servants, second only to those few more special soul servants. Blake even knew. Even Malfoy's soul power is weaker than Black's.
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card, directly on my channel, or right here on the screen. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.